Ringrazio tutti per la collaborazione.
So we are starting in due course. Thank you very much for kindly being here. We start this new session on the secret to success, getting the most out of your choice of components. Please remember there's a simultaneous interpreting service. So for those of you who may need it, you may get the simultaneous interpretation into Italian of the presentation by Dr. Padlevsky. This session will be chaired by Mr. Luca Pagni from La Repubblica. I'm very pleased to have him with us once again. He's a journalist of La Repubblica, and together with Elena Comelli, who is here this morning, they are two of the most significant representatives of journalism in the area of energy, and they are highly careful and interested in these topics. So I'll give the floor then to the chair, Luca Pagni, to start the session. Thank you. Thank you, and good afternoon to everyone. As you heard, I was with you also last year, and thinking of my participation once again, I made a couple of considerations. About 15 years ago, I moved from the area of politics to the area of finance, especially energy, as a journalist. And the first years, my work was somehow traditional. When there was something going wrong, we sort of knew what would happen. Then things have changed. Many unexpected events have come along, and this has gone hand in hand with very significant developments that I had a chance to report, especially in the early stage on a daily basis. But while I was preparing my presentation today, and looking back to many of the things that I and other journalists wrote about these things, I realized that in the past year or so, I've been less active as a journalist in the area of renewable energy sources. The reason was also related to my own career inside my newspaper, but also in the area of finance, on which I focus most. These topics have not come to my attention as much as they should have done. I wrote an article on what is going on in Parliament, in politics, and I highlighted some of the problems that seem to be still facing us. On the other hand, we now sort of take for granted the importance of this area of thinking. So probably we write less about that because many things are now taken for granted. It's taken for granted that people are aware of a number of things. They don't need us to report about them. We know anything about what's going on in the area of driving, automatic electric vehicles, and so on. So that's one of the reasons why the coverage of these issues has perhaps dropped in the past few months. On the other hand, this also means that it's important for a journalist to look for really new information. That's why I'm very grateful for this invitation, because it's an opportunity for me to cast a glance on what's really going on in this sector now. It's a kind of information that I will exploit in a way for the next year or so. So we are going to start this new session on getting the most out of your choice of components. That's something I'm really interested in hearing experts talk about technologies is a great opportunity and a rare opportunity, so I want to take full advantage of it. We're going to start with a presentation on PV modules technology. I also wrote an article on the modules that are used on lakes or basins, which I find very interesting, using new materials. Vasculitis was a material that I associated to a journey to the center of the earth, but then I realized that it's used also for other purposes. So, Mr. Ruta, the floor is yours.
Si sente?
Can you hear me loud and clear? Okay, thank you very much for your introduction, and thanks for this invitation to illustrate the new technologies in photovoltaic modules. I work for Italia Solare. These are 5 numbers that one always has to remember. Our market share is 12.8%, so 1/9 of the modules installed last year were made by us. This is the result of an effort to improve reliability of our products so that they could have a better energy efficiency and reduce SOE, the parameter used to measure all technologies, to assess all technologies, and to make our products as reliable as possible and certified for their capability of being used in any kind of environment for over 25 years. This is our product portfolio, and as you see, we have both monofacial and bifacial products with all sorts of technologies, all covered by a 12-year guarantee. Now, let's go back to what has happened over the past few years. There's been a major evolution. Basically, our portfolio has been entirely changed. And as all big businesses, we try to increase our module sufficiency endlessly, increasing their efficiency as well as their power, thus minimizing a number of costs, including assembling or handling of PV modules. And this was made possible by an expansion in our manufacturing capacity. All players, worldwide players, are vertically integrated and can control the production chain from ingots to buffers, then cells, and most modules. So technological innovation, which is constantly being expanded by a constant search to improve reliability of products. And now there are important innovations involved in cells and the modules. What's happening then on the market? The market is characterized by many companies producing increasingly large cells. We were the first to introduce the 158 millimeter cells, but some even larger cells are available on the market now. And at the same time, there's an attempt to reduce the losses from the cell to the module. When you laminate the PV modules, you can't preserve the same efficiency of your cells. So attempts have been made to find solutions to increase the efficiency of modules and counteract this yield loss. So we now have a set of products on the market that are very diverse. In the case of portfolio modules, this is true, but many other components have been characterized by the same evolution where designers need to compare different options not only on the basis of price, because there are many other factors involved. And the only parameter that we can use to compare similar things is SOE, and avoid making comparison based only on price or on other secondary factors. So we want to have a completely global design, and that's especially important when we talk about bifacial modules. So we are increasing product efficiency, which represents indeed efficiency is represented here. And as you see, there's been a constant increase and development in the monocrystalline product. And this is accompanied by an ability by the main manufacturers that are, let's say, the first 10 manufacturers are now trying to increase the capacity of the whole production chain. The notion of bankability, which is very important, because when you design a plant, it must also be funded. So you need to use high quality products made by companies that have a long history and reliable and transparent budget. So the main 10 manufacturers are concentrating production into an integrated unit. You see here the situation evolution in terms of technology over the past few years and during next year. So new solutions have come out on the market. In 2015, 95% of modules were polycrystalline. Then, depending on the market, there were different traditions in terms of number of cells, 36 or 72 mostly. Then we also worked on the cell itself, on high efficiency cells, and a number of new technologies that enhanced efficiency. Then different modules have been developed, moving from a whole cell to a half cell module. Then in about 18 months, bifacial modules have come up, exploiting therefore also the light on the posterior face, and this has implied technological development to be able to fully exploit this innovation. Then next year, I have reported here a number of high-efficiency modules with superimposed cells, which has allowed for a greater power, things like 460 watt peaks. So over these 10 years, efficiency of modules has been increasing by over 30%. And each of these manufacturers did its own share of the job. What we did was we cooperated actively in this area, and I don't think that no other company may be able to cut down the cost of raw materials by 90% while increasing by 30% the product efficiency. I think that that's almost quite a miracle. Why are we focusing so much on module efficiency? I don't want to give you facts and figures, but you can see here the advantage of using an 805 watt modules versus 405 or 330. These are 2 by 1 meter modules. Efficiency in the last line is 73.1. In the first case, 81.5. And now uh, even higher efficiencies are feasible, are possible. You can see 20, 20 and 17. Also, the number of strings, the number of modules installed has changed. In the end, the cost of a plant depends on all these factors. So there's a sharing that ranges from 10 up to 20 or 25%, and I'm referring just to the quantities and not the actual cost. So, as I said, uh, we have full cells that are still important products, reference products, but many half-cell based modules are developing, which have got a number of advantages. Um, with the half cell, the amount of energy crossing them is 50%, so you have less losses and a better temperature coefficient. Through this technology, this works well or better than the same modules, but with a full cell. So that's an additional advantage over it. We also talked about bifacial modules. Uh, well, why should one have only one-sided cell working? Why not exploit both? In terms of manufacturing, that doesn't make a major difference, but it brings about significant advantages because the posterior side contributes to the production of electric power by as much as 20 or 25%, provided this is placed in the proper installation site. And of course, it has to be possible to install it in a specific site. I was talking about market trend. That's another Bloomberg table with two estimates of what might be the global market share estimate for bifacial PV modules. The optimistic figure is a bit too conservative. I often deal with large-scale utilities, and bifacial cells are now the main option. Sorry, I have to ask you to be strict on time, but I have a question. With the bifacial solution, what is the incidence of the motor cost? I don't know if you can read this data clearly from there, but these are just a few parameters concerning real energy generation gain. The most important thing is albedo, the reflection of the surface behind. If I put it with snow on the other side, for example, a perfectly white surface, that could be as much as 25%. But albedo is not the only factor involved. You can't simply take a module and put it onto the same support systems. They have to be in line with that kind of photovoltaic system. And other factors have to be taken into account. Solar radiation, height, the closer it is to the ground, the less effective it is. Then the pitch or the rear shadow That's what really makes a difference between full and half and bifacial systems. In the past, supported systems were not proper for photovoltaic motors. Now, this is no longer the case. Many things have been adjusted, but the energy gain is influenced by all these parameters. This is a simulation. These are simulation data. I didn't actually measure the albedo throughout the season, which, by the way, changes in the course of a season. But I want to show you to illustrate that with low light, the bifacial system works better or provides a greater gain. And secondly, the energy gain can range from 9.4 to 6.7%. There are also other solutions that I will illustrate later on, or someone else will illustrate that. The idea is to have a normal modules, but with bifacial cells with a transparent backsheet. And then there are a number of other technologies. That's an example of superimposition of cells. This includes circular ribbons and an overlap on each cell to eliminate the gap. That's not the only solution available. There are also others, but it improves the shading tolerance because of splitting a full cell into half, and they do better than a normal full cell when there is low amount of light, of sunlight. All of this, as you can see, has got some advantages because even when the light is scarce, there's a good energy gain. So in the future, there's going to be consolidation of the wafer size. The smaller ones are going to get off the market and no longer competitive. Probably there will be an introduction of both positive and negative doping. Now 90% are using positive systems with phosphorus. There will be a constant research and development work to reduce the lid effect and the annual loss, and to improve efficiency and reliability of products. Thank you very much for your attention.
Antonio Ruta, responsabile servizio.
Thank you, Antonio Ruta from Italia Solare. Let's now hand the floor over to Stefan Padleski. DuPont Photovoltaic Solutions.
Mr. Ruta just said that FEV panel should last for a very long time, more than a car or than a wearable. But how is it possible to be more efficient and reliable?
That's a very good question.
Thank you.
I will try to address that. So we'll go on with a relatively technical presentation, so we'll try not to bother you too much, with details. So we'll try to surf the waves, just try to focus on the message. And I know that there is a timekeeper here, very detailed, so we'll try to keep up my time. So good discussion this morning. First of all, thank you to Italia Solare for arranging this wonderful event. Learned personally a lot. This morning as well, good discussion on the regulatory aspects. That's certainly one of the key success factors to make solar energy successful in this country and any other country, frankly. But also technology is equally important. I mean, it's an imperative to ensure that the PV solar system remain the most cost competitive technology on the LCOE basis. And it's not exactly cost, of the components. It's really on the cost on electricity basis. So this aspect of reliability is absolutely critical because a PV system durability lifetime is more than a car. It's 25 plus years. Now it's more expected to be in the 30 years. And to make a system operate for such a long period of time is actually a challenge. It's not happening by accident. So you have to do the right things to make sure that it happens. So now I have to show. Voila. So I will skip, the DuPont operate upstream across the value chain. We make materials, so we are silently present. If you operate downstream, you may not know us, but about 50% of the panel deployed globally would contain some DuPont material at the backsheet level. We have a brand called Tedlar, the metallization pastes, and also we carry specialty polymers for encapsulants. Enough said about DuPont. One thing important, as a company, we have sponsored for about 8+ years a program to investigate how the system operate and age in the field. So we have collectively developed a portfolio of inspections, developing a database of observation in the field. So showing here where we are today. So we do that globally. We have a global team collecting this information because it's a good thing to say or to make a promise that the panel will operate for 25 years, but then if it fail after 5-6 years, then we have a problem. And so the purpose of our program was to detect and collect all this information in one hand, and also to develop some improved testing protocol. The testing, the IEC, there is a standard called the IEC that is not a good marker predictor of how a system and a panel would evolve over time in the field in a given climatic environments. So we felt important to develop an improved and more reliable accelerated testing protocol, which is described on the bottom. I won't go into the detail, but basically that was one of the purposes of this exercise. A panel is exposed to multiple stress factors, from irradiations, from thermal stress, and in fact, with one of the speakers this morning talking about what may be the weather report in Italy in 2080, puts so much more pressure from the stress standpoint on all the components. So all these stresses actually can accelerate the degradation of the panel. So at the panel level, things can go wrong. I mean, many things can go wrong, but in a nutshell, you can affect the integrity of the panels, leading to some safety risks. A panel is an electrical component, so if you have some electrical protection loss, then you have a problem. Basically, you have to change the component, or the degradation, the power degradation can go at a higher rate than what you would expect. All these things are induced by the outdoor stress environments. The outcome of analysis is really summarized here. So in a nutshell, out of the 2 gigawatt of panels that we inspected, about more than 30% displayed some visual level of degradations. They were less than 4 years old. That's another thing important, not 25, not 30, but less than 4 years old. 50% of the defects affected the cell. You have a whole visual collection here of what it may look like. And the other 50% affected the backsheet, which is the protective component sitting on the back sides. And then the rest is split between the junction box and the encapsulant. So it's not a small number. 4 years having such a level of degradation tells you that a fair amount of system or panels will fail before the end of their lifetime. I will show you an example from the field. This is a case study from a system in Arizona. We are not going to disclose the name of the manufacturer, but it turned out that with the very same nameplate, that particular manufacturer used a different type of backsheet material, different type of BOM, bill of materials. The fate of these materials were very different. So same manufacturer, different materials, different issues observed in the field. So going very rapidly, out of 4 different type of material used on the back side, 1 of them had no problem, a PVF-based material, and the 3 others had displayed some cracking, different level of cracking, front, middle, and the back side of the crackings. In this particular case, the system owner had to replace all defective panels. So that takes time, though it wasn't the warranties, you have to stop operation, you have to replace, so there is a cost associated with that. So the best strategy to mitigate that risk is to make sure that you are using the most robust material and to avoid such a situation. Even though you will be able to replace the panel, the cost may be covered by the supplier. So that's something very important. Another one, I draw the attention to these particular materials that has been used as a backsheet called a polyamide-based backsheet. This fortunately is not used anymore, but there are about 12 gigawatts of system deployed with this particular type of material. And we know from our studies and from our testing activities that 100% of these panels, this type of material, panel protected by this type of material will fail before the end of the lifetime. So they will have, in a way, to be either replaced or fixed, one way or the others. So that's really important to watch out of what material, what bill of material is used, because you don't want to end up with such a situation at the end of the exercise. Now, talking about polyamide, there is now a need by many system owners who have passed the warranty terms to repair, find a way, rather than buying a new component, new panels, to repair the defective system. So we are developing, like other companies, solution. So now that's not our preferred approach, you know. So it's really mitigating something wrong that should never have happened. But we've been asked to develop a solution, and in fact, looking at the magnitude of the problems, there is now a segment, a market that will grow in the space of repairing defective panels. So just to give you that type of perspective as well, so that we create some side activities. Talking about bifacial very quickly, you know, very good presentations from Antonio, and we do have a collaboration with Italia Solare along the clear Tedlar-based backsheet, the transparent backsheet. Now, by default, bifacial is a very good technology. We believe that in many cases it can really help lowering the LCOE by bumping up the power output. So no question about that. There are certainly questions from the industry around predictability, you know, how much I will gain in a given environment. So there's still some fine-tuning processes ongoing in the industry, but the belief is that in many cases you will get some advantage from the power output and therefore on the LCOE basis. Now, by default, the industry has been using glass. You know, glass is a transparent material. Glass is, in fact, is a very good material. But as a glass backsheet, putting another piece of glass on the back sides creates some issues according to our studies. Talking a little bit more about that. So out of our inspections, we found that about 30% of the glass panel that we inspected display some degradations. They were very simple crackings, two types. You know, it's either crackings of the glass or the delamination of the encapsulant. So the encapsulant is the glue in between the two layers of glasses, so you delaminate in between. So those are the most common issues with this type of structures. Now, also, glass is perceived to be a very strong, stronger and more robust material, and it's true. Now, you have to understand that in the glass structure, most manufacturers are using thinner version of glass that are not tempered. Tempered is a way to build up some strength within the glass. You quench the panels after fabrication, so you build up some robustness within the glass, so that you can do that with a relatively thick layer of glass with the conventional panels. But as you go to glass, most manufacturers are using thinner layer of glass, and the glass are not tempered, so they're more fragile, not as robust as the conventional one. So that's problem number one. So and that's one of the reasons we see so much cracking with the glass structures. Also because with the Gen 1, the first generation of panels, most panels were not framed. Now all of them are getting framed again. So as a solution mentioned earlier, and Antonio mentioned that we've been teaming up to introduce clear backsheets. You know, clear backsheet is a conventional technologies. Now, we made the backsheet clear to be compatible with the use of bifacial solutions. And there are a certain number of advantages where we see. One is weight reductions. You are back to a very conventional panel structures. So all the manpower, transportation, installations, processes are very similar to what you would do with a conventional panel. So there is a benefit on that aspect, to make it easier. You also lower the risk of the PID. Glass carries the sodium, which is the source of the problem of the PIDs with the glass, with the panels. So some of the points here, so around reliability, so you are back to a very conventional structures with the glass and the clear Tedlar backsheets. So we have 30 plus years of experience in this particular technology platform. Based upon the testing protocol that we design to mimic what is happening in the field based upon our field study program, we obviously reuse the very same process to ensure that the new technology, the new transparent technology is compatible with that, and it is. PID, we did some testing. There are a lot of testing done that shows that the risks of PID is much lower with the use of a glass clear Tedlar backsheet material versus a glass structure. So in a nutshell, these charts show you, some of the detail of the studies. Second aspect is also, it's interesting because now the back side of the panel is an optical component, so it brings transparencies. You have the albedo, you bring lights from the back side, so you have to ensure that it stays transparent as long as possible. So the cleanability aspects, can become an issue. I mean, the industry doesn't yet have this expertise and this experience yet, but this is something we're watching very carefully. And here again, using a polymer, fluoropolymers, that brings some advantage in terms of the cleanability of the back side of the surface. You can clean the front, but not the back. So if you affect the back side with some dust deposition, you affect the power output of the system. So that's another key advantage. The other one is the thermal management. The material glass is non-transparent to the infrared, so you have a greenhouse effect, so to speak, at the cell level. So the cell temperatures equilibrate at a slightly higher temperature on the glass packaging structure versus the glass backsheet structures. And temperature is the enemy. I mean, you kill the efficiency of the cells. Here, we estimate the difference, delta to be between 1 to 2 degrees in differences in the advantage of a conventional structures. But then the proof is in the pudding. You have to test in the field, what is happening, looking at a glass versus a glass backsheet. Now, it's a starting point for us. We started evaluating that in different locations around the world, including in the Middle East. We're starting a program with KAUST in Saudi to make a benchmark comparison, an A/B comparison, glass versus glass backsheet. And here we show, that we have about a percentage upon 8, we think it will be about a percentage a difference, power output improvement. More power means lower cost, basically, or more, lower LCOE, everything else being equal. So that's something we will keep watching very carefully along the introduction of this new technology. So in a nutshell, think, very carefully, strategically about, when we talk about cost, we really mean LCOE. So that takes into account the durability aspects. So a system has to operate for 25, now 30 years. So ensuring that you have to really carefully select the components, during your project development activities, because that can make a difference in the real life environments. Polyamide, we talked about that. So there may be an opportunity, a new business opportunity in the repairing segments, to repair defecting panel down the road, as many of them won't survive, won't be able to survive the 25 years lifetime. The glass structures is not as robust as what you may think. Glass is a very good material, very durable, but the packaging itself, the way panel construction, make it not robust. So the solution is you can still utilize more conventional technology using a backsheet, transparent backsheet. We carry one of them. So that brings all the benefits we talked earlier about the weight reduction, using an existing manufacturing process as well, a low risk of PID, and the lower operating temperature at the cell level. And then obviously, it's not only about mitigating risk, it's not only about material or component manufacturing, but it's about bringing all across the value chain the best practices from a design standpoint and also from an operational standpoint down the road. Could talk more about that, but that's about where I want to start to finish my as a conclusion. Yes, thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Podleski, for your very interesting analytic speech. Passiamo ora a un altro tema tecnico.
Let's now move on to another topic. I'm a financial journalist, so I try to follow these important achievements, and we often ended up talking about inverters when talking about new technology. It's definitely an important theme. What is really fascinating to me is the connection with the new electrical vehicles, the new trends to anticipate what is going to happen over the next few years. Thank you.
La parola a Stefano Alberici, che è qui.
Stefano Alberici is the next speaker on behalf of INJT.
Adesso mi sentite? Scusate, dopo pranzo uno magari dorme più del solito. Allora, io sono Stefano Alberici.
Good morning. I'm Stefano Alberici. I work for JETIM Italy. JETIM is a Spanish multinational corporation that has been working for a number of years in the area of power electronics. You may be surprised, but power electronics has been developing over many years, much more than solar energy. So these are all the sectors on which we are involved. Wind power, PV power, hydropower, railway tractions, mobility, all sorts of things. So you can get an idea of how long this company has been working. And that's not a minor thing, because whenever we talk about predicting the function of things for 25 years, it's obvious that it would be very important that companies too could have the same life expectancy to be able to really predict the future and work on the basis of their plans. These are our manufacturing sites. They're virtually everywhere. In Europe, we've got 2 plants in Spain, then USA, Brazil, and India. So we are where we are needed, basically. And this is the distribution of our plants. In the area with the hexagon, we've got manufacturing plants, and all the others are places where we are active anyway. So we are active really virtually everywhere. Now, this is taken from Bundekamp. I'm not a great expert in economic predictions, but I was asked to try and illustrate where the market is moving. I know that Cooper McKenzie's predictions tend to be conservative. That's the same kind of attitude I tend to have. They say it's pessimistic. This is the world projection data in terms of installations expressed in gigawatt spikes. After 2019, the level should be stable, and they say probably it's not going to grow. Well, having that stability is good anyway. That would provide business opportunities for many generations. 125 gigawatt per year, quite an amount. We are in this gray area, and I hope that this prediction materializes in the end, because it's going to be good for everyone. It seems I'm not very lucky with managing this computer anyway. This is taken from Terna data of July this year, about 4 or 5 months ago, and shows the distribution for a power class in megawatt in Italy, 55.6 megawatt between 150 and 120 and 100 kilowatt of power. And then you see the number of plants and so on. Smaller plants are much more numerous. So we don't have a preference on the kind of inverters. We manufacture all of them. If, for example, you got a small plant, you'll try to use a string inverter. In other cases, I'll use a centralized inverter, because that would be an advantage also in terms of manufacturing time. I'm afraid this PC really hates me. It's gone off. This is an example of what we do. This is a string inverter, and the other one is centralized. Depending on the kind of use, we have this 100 kilowatt PL without the integrated transformer, and the 160 kilowatt system, a new product, which is again string type, and then centralized have 3.6 megawatt ampere or 3.28 megawatt ampere. So let's see how technology is evolving and how we can improve efficiency, durability, and reliability. One of the main enemies in electronic is illustrated here. There may be a current inside the system. It creates heat, and this heat needs to be released. Otherwise, the electronic system will be stressed and its life expectancy will drop. We said, okay, how can I improve this external heat exchange? There are many options, but the best is to use a liquid closed system that circulates inside the system, so that the thermal stressed area, the power phases, can release heat externally and more efficiently. This will be on the market next year, and we are really very much working on this because it's a really top new technology. But now I want to talk about storage. There were many comments I heard this morning on storage, and it seemed to me there's some controversy there. I think that storage is really one of the key future development of renewable energies. But I feel that some people are a bit against that. Much depends on how this system is designed. With the wrong type of project, you won't get what you want, quite obviously. So the important thing is to have a perfect design. What can this be used for? Storing power is just one of the things this does. It provides grid stability and RAM control. Whenever there's a peak electricity need, I need another energy source. Storage is the energy that you can put on the grid to make up for these peak needs. Then energy time shifting That's really a new paradigm, a new Copernican revolution. Without this, I could not produce electricity at 12 o'clock and consume it at 2 o'clock p.m. But it doesn't mean that the time shifting can just be used for differences in terms of hour, but also in terms of day or week. Unfortunately, we're focusing too much on price. When we do that, what happens, as we heard, is that polyamide works for 25 years and then systems fail because they were too cheap. Then self-consumption. That's one of the most important things. Some years ago, I remember the idea was that one should be able to increase consumption. Otherwise, what's the point of putting on the network energy that is more expensive than what I produced? So, storage is something that I'm using and that will provide energy in time. Then voltage and frequency control. These are asked for by the grid, by Turner. But I need to be able to make them very quickly. We'll need to manage dozens of gigawatt hours in just hundreds of seconds. So you need to have a system that can manage the additional exceptional power. That's why this is a great change in the system. And then, last but not least, you need to have a predictable production. By definition, we cannot plan production, but we can with storage. If you want to sign a contract of supply saying that tomorrow at 5:30 or 3:30, I'll need to have 50 megawatts power. Of course, I should rely on weather conditions. Conversely, with storage, I can know that in 24 hours, I know what is the amount of energy I've stored, and I know that I can release it. And I just want to end by showing you these 3 minutes. 3 minutes, 3 examples, sorry. These are the very common available controls. But how can you do that? And then you see the grid that is connected. We are, if you like, represented by what's on the left. There's a battery bank, which is not exactly a generator, it's virtual. In parallel, I have a photovoltaic plant, the 2 inverters that are represented as centralized here. This one below is bidirectional because it can manage incoming and outgoing current. And all of this is controlled by a central system, ENF, local network management system, that works so that incoming and outgoing energy flows are what the operators expect. And then self-consumption on the right, you don't have the grid anymore. There's a company, for example, that requires a lot of energy 5 or 6 days a week, or even 7 days a week. And then on the left, you have got the battery bank, then the real source, and then you got the additional device, but I've placed a disconnector here. Because if I want, I can work with no energy taken from the grid. I know that it's there and I'm happy, I know that in case of troubles, difficulties, or scarcity, I can use it. So I can take advantage of both photovoltaic energy and the grid. Then what about standalone? Well, there's an increasing number that would like to use a standalone system. We could also have a local self consumption grid here. Here we placed the diesel generator because some people may be afraid of not being connected. Okay, you got a generator, but don't use it. And in fact, you place a disconnector so that when you want, you just get disconnected. So again, photovoltaic storage and intelligent control device. And that's a practical example, 7.2 megawatt hours installed in the Arab Emirates. Temperature is hot there, so they use a sodium sulfur battery, the liquid sodium, which makes them more efficient. And there are you can use all sorts of things, including supercapacitors, things that can be downloaded in just a few seconds. They are the technology of the future. We are really really in front of a Copernican revolution, and we must take it on board to a full extent. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thanks a lot. You've been very quick. The next presentation will be again on storage. Marco Pigni is the coordinator of WG storage for Italia Solare. What's your feeling about what has just been said? Are we really before a Copernican revolution?
Sì, pronto. Direi assolutamente mi convince. Ringrazio.
Well, it is convincing. I would like to thank those who took the floor before me, because usually I'm the motivator after lunch to make people believe that storage system of all sizes can be adopted and used in every field with patience, perseverance, and conviction that are going to be one of the enabling factors for the energy transition. The speaker who took the floor before me already said why technologically and also from an engineering standpoint, they are an enabling factor in the microgrids of every size and help a lot with renewables, but in energy, with energy efficiency and electrification of demand, to reach goals to reduce emissions that are very important. So they are truly a key element. Storage in general is necessary. We need thermal, electrical, mechanical storage. So we will have to review our way of thinking and believing that we can generate energy as we like to consume the resources of the earth without thinking of the consequences. So storage is a great educator of ecological self-conscience. It is part of the integral ecology that Pope Francis has included in its encyclical letter, and that is educating us all. No to the economy of waste. Thanks, yes to a wise storage to once again give new momentum to all the benefits of innovation. After the sermon, I will talk about price trends, technology and markets, and innovation in storage systems. My overview will be an overview of data, costs, volumes, market shares. So let's have a look at this first slide. The cost of storage in terms of capex from the smaller meters, 6 residential storage, up to commercial ones, and then wholesale applications, transmission and distribution. The current situation shows a decreasing cost range. We're going to see that in a minute. We now reached $300 per kilowatt hour. And in terms of size, 100 megawatt, 400 megawatt hour. So we are close to the $200 and $100 or euro per kilowatt hour. And these are the thresholds that apparently will help us take off, will help us promote all the applications in every continent, also in those continents that will record some important future growth, so Africa, South America, Asia. All storage technologies are going down in terms of price, so not only lithium. And you can see the expected price decreases, all above 10%. From flow battery to lithium to advanced lead or lead. Where are we doing storage right now? In the US, in Europe, and in Japan. These are the leading countries, but also Australia is growing, South America, China, of course. But the main developments are recorded in these 3 macro areas: US, Europe, and Japan. Trends in Europe from 2015 to 2020, important growth from less than 1 gigawatt hour cumulative market size to almost 6 by the end of 2020, so pretty soon. And this is both residential and commercial, and also large utilities for the stability of the grid. So residential is gaining more and more ground. It accounted for a minority share. Now it is growing. And then behind the meter is a growing trend, not only in Italy, but also in Europe. This is just an overview. So Italy has not been waiting and seeing. Terna, with its projects, has filled part of the gap, and Italy is now ranking 3rd for the installation of power-intensive and energy-intensive systems. Mostly the experimental projects. The actual challenge is to build new megawatt hours and gigawatt hours with market mechanisms. So with actual competition, because the services guaranteed by storage and the possibilities to use them are definitely impacting on costs and encourage investments in renewables in general and in photovoltaics in particular. Here you can see a breakdown of what's been done. All these projects were technologically and technically successful. What they had to do is to guarantee the necessary technology, and they all did it. Especially power-intensive performance was very, very reliable.
Ora andiamo invece a qualcosina di più basso.
Now, let's have a look at these small residential systems that are the future in European trends. What's the situation in Italy? Statistical data is pretty encouraging. In March 2019, we've got 19,000 plants with 82 installed megawatts and 167 megawatt hours. Small residential plants that account for an interesting storage plant all combined. There are RSC projects along with operators in Lombardy to do service network services, and the experimentations are being concluded, and the operators that will promote this activity, negotiating it with Turner, are exploring new options. Thanks to digital energy, will be possible to combine many residential storage systems as if they were just one station. So the Lombardy is the first region, Veneto is the second one, Molise is the last one. Last one not only because it is a small region, but because there's still a culture needed. The world of renewables, the world of photovoltaics must go hand in hand with the world of storage, but for everyone, not only for regular citizens, but also for mayors, for advisors, councillors, everyone who is promoting regional policies.
Cumulativo, l'installazione di energy storage.
Cumulative energy, the estimates here are by Bloomberg, 3 or 4 gigawatts for now. But look at the increase. In 20 years, we will have to speed up. We will reach almost 1,000 gigawatts. We still have China, India, US, but Latin America, Australia are also growing. Italy is not included here in these forecasts, but our challenge is to be amongst the top 10 by 2040. I think we can make it if we organize projects like the ones that have been presented here. These are other examples of growth trends and applications. On the left, you can see how the behind the meter is going to grow. It will be the prevailing application of the whole storage sector. This, of course, is just an estimate, so it can be confirmed or not. But what's for sure is that we will not in a position of excluding small-scale distribution. We did lots of photovoltaics. Costs have gone down by 80% over the past 10 years. Wind energy recorded a 50% decrease in terms of price, while storage now records an 85% decrease in terms of price, from $1,200 per kilowatt hour to $200. And thanks to what? Because batteries are being sold for electric vehicles and then battery farms. There will be 8 more in 10 years, 4 in Asia, 3 in the US, 1 in Australia, and 2 in Europe. So 2 plus 1, that is starting now. Then sustainable mobility. Sustainable mobility means batteries that can become a stabilization element and flexibility of the grid. but also an element of the microgrid that is our homes as an element of internal flexibility. Then price decrease in Italy. We are in line with the global trends. Italian prices have been going down. And it will be even more important to focus on 2020, 2024. These will be the key years. You will have to fight a war here. And you will have to be convinced that this technology altogether is the alternative from a social, economic, environmental standpoint. And you have to tell everyone, and you have to sell this idea and to convince people to buy without asking too much of the state, of the institutions in terms of incentives. Also when it comes to storage, also when it comes to the possibility of not having a cumulative storage for photovoltaic plants that have incentives in the feed-in tariff, even if there is no retroactivity. Well, we can do it by now, right now, to achieve important numbers on new plants. Then if the reform comes to pass, even better. This is a small example of some microgrids. It's good to see how storage also transforms the life of some peculiar realities, giving that element of stability that allows for rural electrification in some remote areas. For example, Olagüe is in Chile. It's a mining area, and without storage, they couldn't read at night. They couldn't do anything at night. Always in the dark. They were not connected to the grid. With storage, they managed to electrify. Now they have 200 kilowatts. A whole village is benefiting from power. Different technology in different contexts that give the best result. Then on Flinders Island in Australia, storage is already competitive compared with gas, oil, diesel, or supply by sea. So the microgrids on smaller islands are the winning solution and are also an important tourist attraction, because decarbonizing islands in Italy, in Europe, or in the world is a very important topic. A very interesting plant was built here. Is still microgrid. Well, you don't get there, you sell a container full batteries and you say bye-bye and leave. You have to study the island, you have to look at the needs, you have to look at the loads, you have to understand what the supply chains are, you have to look at all the interesting factors. You build microgrids and then you guarantee storage and then you inaugurate the whole thing and then you stay there. The problem is that you have to operate it every day. These are plans, just like photovoltaics. I'll move on and I'm practically done. Some side effects of the capacity market. Maybe it served its purpose or part of its purpose, but in addition to the capacity market, authorizations have been requested for 466 megawatt of energy storage, mostly Enel, but also other operators. Is this a coincidence? Probably, but maybe not. Maybe in combination with thermal sources, and well, that's a good challenge.
Non c'è tutto solo il bene in queste applicazioni. Tutti mi fanno.
There's not only something positive in these these installations. Well, you're waving at me, but I don't think I've talked that at length. So, to conclude, we have fast reserve, 230 megawatts of total capacity, from 5 to 25 megawatts per project. Well, these 25 megawatts seem a lot and might be profitable because, of course, between 78 and 108 kilowatt, 78 and 108,000 euro per megawatt per year. That's pretty good. But Italia Solare will try to make sure that all these projects come to pass. Opportunities, you are properly aware of them. You can read them by yourselves. Strengths and then challenges. Be very careful. The power to gas, hydro pumping, these are challenges. These are not actual threats. We have to think of seasonal storage too, and the overall management of integrated renewables. These are allies. They are not our enemies. Of course, it is important to guarantee environmental compliance, so methane and hydrogen has to be produced using renewables. Thank you, and sorry for talking at length. Next time you invite me, you have to give me a mechanism to reprimand our speakers and to maybe cause a power outage. Thank you. And I would like to thank all the participants of the first panel of the afternoon. Let's move on to session 4.
Spazio ai nuovi relatori. Grazie mille. Ciao.
Senti, arrivo mezzo in ritardo, riesco a fare il primo intervento. Poi
Ah, ok, va bene.
non è un problema.
Per me ero segnato, per gli altri non è un problema, direi di no.
Non ti preoccupare. Faccio benissimo. Sì, perfetto. Faccio da qua.
Ok. Manca un... Va bene, passiamo...
Okay. Okay, after analyzing what we have to do, now we're going to discuss how we have to do it. We'll see what are market trends, the various business models, especially for residential, industrial, and commercial plants, and what happens after installation. As Marco Pini said, you can't just build a plant and then off you go. For technical reasons, we're going to give the floor first to Alessandro Marangoni. You already know his work in Altesis, and it's going to address this question of the secondary market. Thank you very much, Luca, and I thank Italia Solare for organizing this. As our chairman was saying, this market has now become mature. So some consolidation processes that are now underway make new investments interesting and shed light on what's happening on what we already have, what is known as the secondary market. As Luca Pagni pointed out, we've been mapping renewable energy sectors and investments there for some years. So I want to start with this general outlook of the Italian condition. In 2018, we'll see now Italian investments by companies in a broad sense, or rather, the amount of money they have invested both in Italy and abroad. As Mr. Viscontini was pointing out, incentives have stimulated development, resulting in a large amount of photovoltaic installations and helped companies to work also abroad. In 2018, we mapped 178 utility-scale operations over zero 0.9 megawatt power, with a total of 10.8 gigawatt power, including both Italy and foreign countries, with a value of 11.3 billion euro. These operations include all sorts of things: new projects, new investments, extraordinary financing, mergers, acquisitions, and different kinds of partnerships. The main trends that we can see are domestic growth that accounted for about one-third of the total number of operations. In Italy, in the past year, wind energy was more important than photovoltaic energy, alas. So we are talking about utility scale, so everything for wind energy and only part of it for solar energy. The secondary market is still an important part of the overall market, and in fact, external growth in 2018 was prevailing in terms of investments, and the number of acquisitions made doubled in comparison with other forms of collaboration that have been stable. Interestingly, many of them, however, concerned what is known as smart mobility. So this market has been slowing down a little bit, but it's still very active in foreign countries. External growth in 2018 included 48% of operations. Out of 86 transactions in Italy and the world for 6 billion euro, over 75% were made in Italy, and acquisitions accounted for 3/4 of the total figure. Acquisitions mostly concerned the sale or purchase of existing installations, especially in the photovoltaic sector. So we are not talking about M&A here, but really purchase or sale of assets. This cake shows the various actors involved in these operations, and as you see, core renewable operators still take up a prevailing part of the cake. There's been an increase in EPC and installers and financial players that are still very active in this area, unlike energy companies that have seen a significant decrease by 9%. These are the Italian secondary market operations in 2018. The value was, the size was 1.2 gigawatt traded over the past year, with 29 operations that were, of course, concentrated in the area where plants are more common in the south, mostly, and here they are divided into size and type of technology, on the basis of size and type of technology. Photovoltaic energy plays a key role in plants below 10 megawatts, and this category accounts for almost 50% of operations. In terms of main trends, there has been a significant investment growth, which includes, again, not only investments in Italy, but also abroad.
Parlando di una crescita estremamente importante rispetto
Such
all'anno
growth
precedente
has
e che
increased
invora si
significantly over the previous
concentra
years, and it was concentrated mostly on
come sapete, la
photovoltaic energy.
concentrazione nel comparto sta
As you know,
aumentando, sta
industry
continuando a crescere e
concentration
i primi
keeps
10
increasing,
operatori
and the top 10
del settore
players
fotovoltaico
in the
italiano nel
Italian
2018
photovoltaic
sono
sector in
scambiati, hanno
2018 have
scambiato l'88%
exchanged
della
88,
potenza
traded
rilasciata sul
88%
mercato
of
con un
the
ruolo
power available on
importante
the
degli
market.
investitori finanziari
And
che
financial
hanno
investors
erogato
played
quasi
an
il
important
70%
role
della
since
potenza
they
e
covered
quasi 3/4
almost
del
69%
valore
power
dei deal.
and
Quello che a me verrà
64% value of
gradito è il
deals.
peso degli operatori
You see
finanziari
here
negli
the
ultimi
role
3
of
anni.
financial investors change over the past 3 years.
Quali sono i principali player? I maggiori 10
Who are the main
operatori che
players?
nel
Well,
fotovoltaico
the top 10
in
PV
Italia fanno
players in Italy
praticamente
cover
la
almost
potenza
50% of the
utilizzata
utility
fondamentalmente
scale
per i
power,
primi 5
which
anni di
was less
vita
than
e
30% in
praticamente
2013,
grazie
5 years
alle
before.
operazioni
This is
di
also
grande
partly the
taglia che
result
sono
of some
state
large
realizzate nel tempo,
operations.
come per tutti ben nota sul
Suffice to
sito
mention
sull'NPR.
the acquisition
Questa,
of
dicevo, nel
photovoltaic
2018
plants
erano
from
quasi
RTR
i
Capital.
principali
In
operatori italiani,
2018, these were the
sottolineando
major
a
Italian
dicembre
players.
2018 perché già
And I say
oggi
this
la
was in
situazione
December 2018
è
because
cambiata
now
in
the
maniera
situation has
pazzesca.
already
Questo tra
significantly changed.
alcune conferme, F Solare Italia che ormai si
There was
avvicina
among
al
these some old
20% della
players, EF
produzione,
Solare
sto
Italia,
parlando di utility scale in
that has
Italia,
reached almost 20% of the utility
seguita
scale
da
power
un
installed
contratto
in
che si
Italy,
chiama
followed by
verranno un
Tages
contratto
Capital
partnership
that
che
acquired
diventerà
3 parks for
nuove
85 megawatts
entrate
and
non solo a
some
livello
new
di nuovi
entries,
investitori ma anche di
not
nuovi
only new
coinvolgimenti di
investors but
player.
also new categories of players.
Le local utility, che una
Uh,
volta si chiamavano
Local
municipalizzate, sono
utilities
entrate
um,
nel mercato con
have
delle
become
acquisizioni importanti
part
che
of the market
altre
as a
local
result of a
utilities,
number of
come
important
sapete nel piano
acquisitions,
industriale, hanno
and
previsto di entrare sia
others
attraverso
will
operazioni di
join
crescita organica,
on the
sia
basis
attraverso
of the industrial
acquisizioni
plant
nel
by
settore che
growth
negli
or
anni scorsi
acquisitions in the
sostanzialmente
sector.
avevano
These are
sviluppato lo
players
stesso
that
segmento.
virtually
Sono
ignored
questo il
this
quadro del
segment until
2018, c'è la
recently. So
fotografia
that was the
del nostro
situation
Business
in
Annual Report. Ti
2018.
do qualche
Um,
anticipazione, quindi dei dati nuovi rispetto a quello che avete visto, di quello che sta succedendo quest'anno.
and I want to show you
Noi
what's
monitoriamo
going on now.
costantemente il
We
settore
are
e vi
constantly
posso
monitoring the
anticipare i
sector,
numeri del primo
and so I
semestre
can give you some
2019.
figures of the
Fa
first
sapere tutto il
6 months of
2019,
2019.
come dei
In
consueti
next
presentiamo
April,
il
we'll
rapporto 2020.
present the
E
2020 report with
133
all the data for
operazioni nel
all
primo semestre di
2019.
quest'anno.
There were 133
La buona
operations during the
notizia
first
è che il turnover
half of this
probabile di
year.
investimenti in nuovi piani
Uh,
e progetti, quindi siamo ancora
Investments in new
intralciati
plants and projects are
il trend
prevailing,
rispetto
contrary
all'anno
to
precedente.
what
Stiamo
happened
parlando
in the
sempre di
previous
PV, come
year.
dicevo, quindi sia Italia,
And
quindi
I'm
sia la nazione
again
che
referring
l'operatore,
to
sia estero, cioè
Italy
imprese italiane, che
and foreign
7,3
countries.
giga
The power is
complessivi, sempre tra nuovi
7.3
investimenti e
gigawatts,
operazioni di merger and
again with new
acquisition,
investments as well as
portando
mergers and
che ben il
acquisitions.
46% è
And
stato
as
realizzato
much as
in Italia. Vedete nel
64%
pie chart
were
la
made in Italy.
suddivisione per
On the right, you
tecnologie,
can
per
see
classi
the
di
divisions
potenza.
by
Come vi ha
technology and power
preannunciato
classes.
Italia Solare saranno rese disponibili presentazioni, quindi staremo in
My
tempi di
presentations will
miglioramento
be
totale
available,
di
of course,
queste
for
figure.
you, so I'm not going to go too much in detail with his facts and figures. Photovoltaic accounts for 41% of the overall figure, and it's still the main area in terms of number of operations. There have been 62 operations globally, and three-fourths of that, 75% of these, in Italy. So, in other words, Italy's market has slowed down in terms of new photovoltaic energy plant installation, but secondary market is still very active.
Andiamo poi sullo specifico della crescita esterna,
In
qua
terms
abbiamo il
of
40%
external
operazioni,
growth, there's been
le
39% growth in
tipologie
terms of number of
prevalenti sono
operations,
le acquisizioni formali,
mostly
circa
acquisitions that now
l'80%
account
del
for
mercato
80% of the
complessivo
overall
e se andiamo
market.
poi sul focus più stretto del mercato secondario italiano
And
di fotovoltaico,
on the Italian
stiamo
secondary
parlando di
photovoltaic
23
market,
operazioni nel
there
primo
have been
semestre di
23
quest'anno
operations
che
during the first half
sommano
of
a circa
2019,
mezzo gigawatt
accounting
passato
for
di
about
mano nei primi 6 mesi di
507
quest'anno. Quindi
megawatts.
praticamente nei primi 6 mesi
So
del
basically,
2019
in the first two quarters of
sono state oggetto
2019,
di operazioni straordinarie più o
um,
meno di quanti ne siano stati
the amount
costruiti
of
in tutto
megawatt
l'anno precedente
that have been
dell'anno.
part of extraordinary operations was
Anche
higher
qui il grafico analogo
than
a quello
the
precedente
amount
fa
of
vedere come
megawatt
le
related to
operazioni
new
complessive
plants
installate,
last year.
evidentemente non solo del
As you can
fotovoltaico,
see
siano
here,
divise
these
per
operations are
tipologia e
divided in
di
terms of
fonte che
technology,
per
type of
dimensione.
source, and size or
La
class of
domanda
power.
ovviamente è quale sarà lo scenario futuro del mercato
Okay, so
del
having said that,
secondario
what will be
fotovoltaico,
the future
visto
scenario
che
in the secondary market
l'operazione
of
è nata una
photovoltaic
volta
energy,
che alla
since
fine
there are
si è
many
comprato di
operations
tutto
going on,
dalla est
and once
dalla,
everything will
da negoziare.
have
E
been
ci
sold or
sono
bought, what
alcune
else could we
tendenze
negotiate
in
on?
qualche modo dove
Well, there are
andare.
some trends underway that provide
L'ultimo anno, diciamo, se il primo semestre 2019 è
some
passato
suggestions on
mezzo
what we can
gigawatt
expect.
di
In
impianti utility
2019,
scale,
half a
vuol
gigawatt
dire
of utility
che è
scale
passato
plants were
grosso modo un
traded.
sedicesimo
That
del
means
mercato utility
about
scale
one
nell'ultimo. Poi sapete, non basta diventare
16th
utility scale per
of the
fare
total utility scale market, even though
in questioni
its size
circa
has
mezzo
been
giga,
estimated
sotto il gigawatt e
in a
mezzo.
rather varied fashion,
Sicuramente negli
but
anni
it's
scorsi c'è
around
stata una
1 megawatt.
processo di
In the past years,
digitalizzazione
there has been
importante,
a significant
sta tuttora andando
concentration
avanti, già i dati che
of
vengono
these
aggiornati nei
companies, which
mesi
is still
successivi al
going
primo
on.
semestre ci
Also,
riconferma il
after
fatto
the
che non sia
first
stato
6 months,
poco e
it
noi
seems
crediamo che
that the
seppur
same trend
non
is
inesauribile ci sia
active,
ancora un certo
and we
spazio
believe
per
that there is
progettare il
still
mercato. Sugli
some
driver sono
room for
l'industrializzazione, la
market
professionalizzazione
concentration.
degli operatori.
The
Chi
key
per
drivers are
esempio ha iniziato a
industrialization
lavorare in
and
questo settore ha presentato una
increased in
formazione straordinaria
skills.
non solo del
Those of you
contesto ma
who've
anche
been
del
working in this
potenziale di
area for a
competenze
number of years
professionali
know
con cui
how
ci
much
lavora.
new
Sicuramente
skills
economie di
have been
scala
acquired
naturalmente
by
altra forza spingono,
stakeholders there.
così come
Economies of scale,
l'elemento di
improvement of
tipo
performance are, of course, key
finanziario.
drivers,
Non è un
as well
caso
as
che questo
financial
mercato sia
investors'
tuttora
role.
sostanzialmente guidato da
It's not a
investitori
chance that
finanziari.
this market
Quali
is
sono le
still mostly
sfide? Che il
driven by
mercato
financial
si è proprio
investors.
affollato,
The
non
challenges
ci sono
are
solo investitori
a
finanziari, ma
market
in per
where
esempio quello delle,
there are
delle local
more and
utility,
more
tutto il
uh,
tema del
more and more
noto
partners involved,
revamping
including
e
local
frontiere tecnologiche.
utility,
In questo
revamping and
quadro noi siamo
repowering,
di
and new
mercato di nuovi
technological
business
frontiers.
e tutto il
So
tema degli impianti in grandi
this
appalti.
implies new market
Il schermo segnalibro
methods
è
and new business
terminato. Grazie a
models
tutti,
and new
buon lavoro.
implants in market parity, merchant, and PPA. Thank you very much for your attention. He apologizes and flies away because he's late. Okay. And now we will talk about the market of photovoltaic plants proper. I've just received some information that you can find on the ERA website. Something that has been a document that has been sent to Parliament, and I want to mention it because they concern an interesting area. Basically, the message is that we need rules to regulate the system to allow for liberalization without being damaging to small corporations. RERA also provides some suggestions on how to do so. It says that 52% of non-household and 48% of household plants were still under protection. What limits competitiveness are the high concentration of markets, the competitive advantages of past suppliers. They point out some they make some important suggestions calling for rules to protect SMEs in January 2021, and after that, through this mechanism should be extended to domestic operators of electricity and gas. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. Good morning. Good afternoon. It's been 2, 3, or 4 years that the protection market has to be introduced, and it's always put off because apparently there are no market conditions to guarantee for small subjects. It's just a chicken and egg story. So let's do a free market, and then let's create structures to check that this market is equitable and transparent. Saying, regardless, that they don't think there are these starting points, it means that it will never come to pass. Moreover, the free market offers great opportunities for saving for individual citizens. As a member of Italia Solare board, I was asked, Vice President, I was asked to make a small overview, or a short overview, of what's the market of residential plants and the industrial sector. Let's see if this works. It's just an overview. Otherwise, I should speak way more than 10, 15 minutes that are allotted to me. Then, of course, I will be ready to take any questions you might have. This is the Italian market. The curve is practically flat. We have explained why it's been like that. The increase in the number of plants and power mirror a pretty flat curve. We have already heard that what happened in Germany last month is equivalent to what we do in a year. And unfortunately, the big grey patch is still looming, and it accounts for the fossil fuels. The fossil fuels needs for electricity in Italy. And you can see that fossil fuels, coal, gas, whatever, still play the lion's share. So the energy produced sees an increase of production in 2019 compared to 2018. Then weather changes are one of the reasons. So there's global heating, global warming, and of course this means more radiation. The curves of radiation are being updated, and you can see that increases are observed not only in Italy but everywhere in the world. This will lead to an increase in production per installed kilowatts. Alas, it's no good news because, as we know, we have to counter this climate change. Let's start from the residential market. So Article 10 is a disruptive element. I used to say that the best thing for our sector is for politics to forget about us, because when they remember about us, they cause incredible damage. And we can never explain why all these articles were not asked by trade associations. There's always someone that spontaneously, without asking the stakeholders or without sharing with the stakeholders, decides to publish these measures. So one day we woke up and we read about this Article 10 on the official journal. What are the effects? Well, great utilities have been hit by a disruptive effect. So the day after the publication of Article 10, someone has already started publicizing their plans with credit measures, and I'm very envious of these companies because, being ready in 24 hours to do publicity is great. I'm a company that boasts of being very fast, but we can't be that fast. Obviously, these gentlemen have recorded tremendous numbers over the past few months because they basically have promoted their systems. So the citizens have immediately become aware of the benefits associated with the credit transfer. So if an operator goes to a regular citizen asking if they're interested in having a 3 megawatt system installed, well, the citizen would immediately reply if they have credit transfer. If we talk to those who represented CNA, Confartigianato, and Italia Solare, because many are our members, you would find out that there's been a slowdown, a drastic slowdown, and for those that have no differentiation in the market, it is a question of survival. So they are at risk of closing down. So Senator Girotto this morning said that they are working on it and they want to adopt some corrective measures. And I am even more afraid here because when they remember about us, well, things get worse. I apologize, but I've been in this sector for too many years to be optimistic and to trust those who are at the government. So let's see what politicians will present us with over Christmas, and hopefully it's going to be Christmas, because every day passing by is an additional problem for companies operating in this sector. What are the business problems today for those working in the residential sector? Well, the turnkey plant, in line with Article 10, with or without, even if the without is rarer, and also sale of electric vectors, especially supply of electric energy with a site contract, sale of free electric energy shares, so-called virtual storage. For every year you stay with me, I will provide you with a number of kilowatt hours for which you are not going to pay the generation costs. And then the installation of turnkey plants with investments of investments of a third party, so a third party that builds something on the roof for Mrs. Mary. And then there are different scenarios. So the installers are working with the scenario B, so the sale of a turnkey plant, so the client pays with credit funding or installments, etc. But the market has always been like this, and since the market has made sure that the photovoltaic sector moved on after the feed-in tariff, so the residential market kept doing its job. We're talking about thousands of installers that over the years have survived thanks to this market. They did, and the related activities did, those who produce or manufacture all the components, etc. As I said, starting from July, the scenario has gone towards letter A, that you can see here. What happened on the industrial market? When I talk about the industrial market, I'm referring to the tertiary sector, to the industrial sector, so covers of important buildings, non-residential activities, the full equity, the unsubscribed credit. With respect to the operating lease, it's become more fashionable, creating some asymmetry. SEU is the so-called user efficiency systems is something that is gaining ground. Usually is when you basically rent your energy to someone that lives in your building. And then some people are proposing the purchase of photovoltaic systems over a 9-year period. Of course, the credit rating has to be checked. So for the second time, I can't go into the details of all these aspects.
Anche perché sotto c'è questo cappello che è il famoso DM.
And this is the famous DM Fair one, and I'm sure that the colleague who will take the floor after me will talk about this. This is another case where lots of paper might have been saved, because in the tertiary sector, in the industrial sector, in the so-called registers, it is my personal opinion, shared by several subjects, that DM Fair was useless and pointless. I'm sorry for the numbers, so many numbers. This is a real case. It's a 250 kilowatt plant, 1,200 hours equivalent. The avoided cost of kilowatt hour is 140 euro. The self-consumption rate, I won't read them all. The interpreters apologize. We don't have the slides. We can't read the numbers. This is a plant that is available on the market. I would like to focus on that pie chart. This is another of those differences in information I was talking about earlier. When we talk about avoided cost as the prevented cost for the plant used as self-consumption, we have to remove fixed costs.
Diciamo che nel migliore dei casi è commercialmente una furbata e poi si può anche andare in una degradazione, no? Di altri tipi di.
So there are
Un impianto di questo tipo,
a plant of this kind.
Qui abbiamo paragonato il TIR e il VAN dell'impianto con decreto e
you can see how it works with decree and without the decree.
sul TIR e il mutuo che vorrà fare 29, ovviamente l'educazione operativa si guarda solo il VAN perché
So the client is not anticipating anything.
Nel quale il decreto.
So the third decree brings no benefit from a financial standpoint to investors. So it brings a parachute for credit institutions in case of default of the client, see the energy of the plant given into the grid at a fixed and constant price. But in terms of cost effectiveness, there are no changes.
Scusate, anche qui ci sono le ipotesi di partenza, no? Quindi il costo del denaro,
cost of money, the unsecured loan for 10 years, the lever that are subjective, but this is a very timely snapshot. We have taken the same plant and we assumed there was asbestos and there was a cost for disposal of asbestos, which we estimated in 58,000 euro per 1,454 square meters. Okay, great. With the price of the 12 euro per megawatt hour for all the energy produced by the plant, well, the fair will be very interesting in this case. No, it won't. From 10 to 11, from 18 to 22 in the case of unsecured loan, and from 10 to 13. So data was interesting. So we made a proposal. There are 6 million square meters of asbestos in Italy. So don't give us all the rest. Give us just 100 euro per megawatt hour for those who remove asbestos. The rest is incentives that are not needed, especially in the paradigm of self-consumption plan. All this is not needed. What is necessary is to help companies have an instrument that is more constant than the famous click date in June of the INAEL call for proposal, where the overwhelming majority of the companies can't access, so they can't have access to that benefit. We must help companies exploit at best these benefits.
Un risparmio di un minuto è come entrare.
Thank you. You saved 1 minute from your presentations. Congratulations. And now we close this session with the presentation by Andros Racchetti from the Renewables Department of GSE. He can surely give us an interesting general picture on the Italy's auction scheme for renewables. Thank you very much for your invitation. I've been asked to provide information on the results of the first set of applications for auctions, but we won't have any specific data until the end of January. So what I want to do today is illustrate the opportunities offered by the IAS1 decree. Speaking personally, trying to give a description of this decree as if it were crystal clear and simple wouldn't be easy, but I'll try to illustrate it as well as I can in these few minutes. It was published in July 2019, but it was actually became effective in August. So I will illustrate by and large the content of this document, but if you want to join and if your project is eligible and you want to ask for access to incentives, you have to read the regulations, the practical regulations published. Two specific documents have been published, one for joining the procedures, and the second for those that will be accepted for the registry, allowed to enter the registries, and want to know how to proceed. The ESR1 decree, after the blackout, if you like, of incentives to photovoltaic energy in the past years, has actually reintroduced this technology among those that can have incentives on the basis of this decree. Unlike the other sources, however, there's a minimum capacity of 20 kilowatts, probably because the legislator felt that new smaller plants already had sufficient support from tax deductions, and they have to be new plants, as I said, made using only new components. For small plants, the tariff, as you know, at which the producer sells energy to the GSC and gets granted feed-in value. For plants over 250 kilowatt, is this incentive, which is the difference between the level of incentives established initially and the price recorded in the specific area and hour in which the energy is supplied. In this case, energy is still of the producer that can establish bilateral contracts or bilateral agreements or whatever. One specific trait of this document is that there's a two-way tariff. GSC grants the producer the difference that I mentioned if it's positive. However, if in the future it becomes negative, the producer needs to give this money to the GSC by paying an additional amount on a yearly basis. To have access to this support, there are two ways: auctions and registers. The two systems have already been used outside photovoltaic energy. The main, for all registers, operators can propose a percentage reduction that would make a priority. The difference between auctions and registers is that the reduction of offer on that level of incentives is not the first criterion. Others have more impact on the selection, the final selection. In the decree considered the technological neutrality, but it's actually a kind of inter-technological competition. Photovoltaic is part of Group A, and it also includes onshore wind. So it has to be competitive with wind plants, with windmills, and it also includes new plants installed on building roofs or on building roofs with removal of asbestos. Then there's another group for hydroelectric and sewage gases and one for refurbished plant. The difference between registers and auctions is plant capacity. It's below megawatt for registers, and above that they can join auctions. All groups can have the chance of having access to both, with the exception of Group 2 with Ethernet, where in asbestos, where this can be done for those above 1 megawatt, because the surface of the plant may be above a certain level. It's quite unlikely that this may happen. There are 7 different procedures, and the data will come out at the end of January, plus 3 following procedures for 2020 and 2021. The groups of power, the power units will grow. You see different figures for registries and auctions. There's a significant amount for asbestos, and there are also some group reallocation mechanisms. For example, for Group A and Group B, if one of the two is not completely saturated, there may be a reallocation of power within the same group, which has not been included in the previous procedures. So if one group is not able to saturate the power concerning one of the procedures, the residual power will be reallocated in the following group. To establish the level of incentives for small plants, the decree has introduced three different tariff definitions. One is the reference tariff specified on Annex 1 of the 2019 decree for photovoltaic, which will be described on the next slide. Then on the basis of these reference tariffs, by joining registries or auctions, operators can offer a reduction percentage that can be from 0 to 30% for registries and from 2 to 70% in the case of auctions where this offer is compulsory. Applying this to the reference tariff, you have the offered tariff, which is actually adjudicated. Then a number of other factors, implementation time or the presence of other incentives given to the same operator, further marginal reductions can be applied, which result in the actual granted tariff. The levels of the reference tariff for photovoltaic energy are from 125 megawatt per hour up to 100 megawatts to 70 for larger power plants above 1 megawatt. Then there are the two systems, additional remunerations, one for Group A2 concerning asbestos removal, or a 10 euro per megawatt hour for self-consumed company on buildings, provided own consumption energy exceeds 40% of net production yearly. As for timing, timing is illustrated in this slide, which I'm not going to go into. That I want to show you operation deadlines. If you have followed what has happened also in other countries in Europe, you may know that deadlines are one of the key factors in terms of offer reductions. The longer the deadline, the greater the reductions of the tariff, and that's quite self-evident. In the case of photovoltaic energy, this ministerial decree talks about 19 to 30 months, depending on whether they are common plants or installed on roofs where asbestos is removed, and depending on whether this is done by a private body or a public administration. For auctions, the reduction in the tariff is of 1% a year, and in the other case it's 0.5% per month. 1% drop is established after the 15th May, after the publication of the ranking, and this is applied every 12 months. But it also implies a 0.5% a month reduction for all the procedures that I mentioned earlier on. This is summarized here, where you can see summary of all tariff reductions for wind and photovoltaic energy. Of course, if we added all other energy sources, the picture would be a bit more complex. Then there are other possible tariff reductions. One is a 5% reduction for plants awarded with tariffs in previous registers, if not entered in operation before the deadline, or in the case of capital contribution payments, up to 26% reduction can be granted for a contribution equal to 40% of the investment. And then there's a 50% reduction in the case of sale to third parties in case of transfer of the winning project before entering into operation and closing the incentivation contract with GSC. And just 2 more minutes to briefly provide some information on these auctions now underway. I want to show you what has happened for wind only in 2012 and 2010. So looking back, we can see that operators needed some time to become confident with the mechanism, and in the first procedure, not all the power available had been allotted. Then reductions went down in 2013 and 14, and in 2016, not only was all the power allocated, but it was done to operators that had a 40% reduction. So all wind energy producers at the time accepted a tariff that was 66 megawatt per hour. If we compare this with the wind energy price in 2017 and 2018, this means that the incentives has been minor. It was 18 euro per megawatt hour in 2018. So what's going to happen now since reference prices are even lower? In spite of this 40% reduction, the level of incentives of 66 megawatt hour was still higher than the price of energy. In this case, starting from 70 megawatt hour, with a reduction from 2 to 70%, the range of offer is from 69 to 21 euro. So offers could really be below the actual value of energy on the market. This shows that the main opportunity offered by this decree does not concern profit so much, but cash flow, which can simplify the procedures to be funded for one's investment. Yeah, we are referring about self-consumption photovoltaic energy only. Yes, in fact, I mean, I didn't mean to be polemical at all. I think that also for large medium or large purposes, the aim is to provide safe flow of financial flows more than really helping them in other senses. But I think we also need to analyze the energy market price. I have included this slide to this end. It compares the prices of different sources in the case of average zone price in the areas in which this energy was actually introduced. For photovoltaic energy, the green bar on the right. At the time, it was about €5 per megawatt hours, and in 2018, the price was about slightly below the PUN. And on the right, as we all know, however, is that there are differences between different regions of the Italian market. So investing in areas like Sicily, where the zone price is higher, can be more profitable or more attractive, if you like, for those who want to join the market, and it's less interesting to join procedures where the market prices are already so low. Thank you very much for your attention. Thank you. Thank you for your presentation. I thank you also for pointing out that in these times where you get financial income from investment is sometimes below zero, this may be an interesting option. And now we move on. Oh no, we got a coffee break, a tea break, sorry. Okay, I would ask you to convene again in 15 or 20 minutes, not more, so that we can try not to end too late. The last session is going to be very interesting indeed. We're going to talk about the Italian solar energy products on land. Thank you very much for your attention, and we'll convene in a few minutes.
So session 5, large-scale PV plants. I'm very curious, of course, to hear from our speakers. But it's a very interesting theme. I think you've read and you've heard about how some utilities are going back investing and strongly believe in the future of the energy sector, that in the next few years will be dominated by renewable plants that are not incentivized. They are investing So when I read about the agenda, I thought that this, from a journalistic standpoint, is the most interesting one, because building big plants and making the existing plant grow, the existing system grow, will imply a number of developments. And of course, we have to combine all this with the peculiarity of the Italian system. So thank you. Almost everyone is in the room. So I will kill you with my presentation, since you're all back here. Let's see if this works. So the title of my presentation is PV and the Environment. It is a proposal developed by Italia Solare because the combination between agriculture and photovoltaics is definitely demanding. In the past, this theme has not been addressed properly. So with the proposals I'm going to show in a minute, we aim to find some solutions for the farming sector. It has always been very important in Italy, one of the key sectors, and the energy sector. So we should create a new model, the model of the agri-energy enterprises, so to make energy an asset at the service of traditional activities like agriculture. I would change microphones if you don't mind, and I will stand. Can you hear me? Well, here you can already see something interesting. These are photovoltaic plants with a different idea with respect to what we're used. You can see breeding here, agriculture, and beekeeping. So the key element on which we have to focus here is that, as we heard this morning in the panels, we are undergoing a climate crisis, so we have to hurry to do something. We have no time left. So time is a determinant factor here. We don't have to lose any more time talking about whether ground-mounted plants are appropriate or not. We've got to talk about how to install them. So on rooftops, on residential buildings, on industrial land, on agricultural land. So there must not be any prejudice here. So ground-mounted photovoltaic is not only a need, but it's an opportunity. We're going to see how. How are we going to do all this photovoltaic? Can anyone tell us? If no one can, let's try to make some assumptions here. The slides will be made available to you. These are the objectives of PNIEC, basically. PNIEC projections. We have to add photovoltaic capacity. In addition to the 20 gigawatts, we should reach 50,000 megawatts. Compared with PNIEC projections. We have reorganized this data because, according to us, this is a target that can be reviewed upwards, up to 73 installed gigawatts. Why should this target be adjusted upwards? Because we have to take into account an average production potential of 1,464, whereas we have to consider a more realistic production capacity of 1,200 hours. And we have to consider that photovoltaic technology has some annual ratings, 0.7, 0.5, 1%. It depends on the components. So if we consider these aspects, we can see that that target of 50 is a target that can be reviewed above 70 gigawatts. Here you can see how much photovoltaics can be installed on rooftops and how much on the ground. I deal with project analysis, so think about the rooftops we assess from a technical standpoint. They have lots of problems. Apart from the fact they may be there are technical problems because some are unsuitable from a static standpoint. Others have to be restructured, so they are not suitable for installations of PV plants. So starting from IEA data and considering that rooftops can be covered with solar panels up to 40% of the surface, we have produced this table. For example, if we consider the matrix 50%, 26 megawatts, 26,000 megawatts, so 26 gigas, can be recorded on the rooftops, whereas with a 50% surface and a ground installation, we would have 26,000 megawatts with the use of agricultural land of 0.32%. If it wouldn't be possible to build on rooftops or anywhere else, if we consider the whole surface necessary to attain these targets, we would occupy 0.64% of the available arable land. So 0.64% is not that scandalous, but this is the crazy scenario we are thinking of. So it might be interesting. So 50%, 0.64%. Then you can see the share land lost to farming annually because of desertification, impossibility to cultivate. Many hectares are lost. These are some facts and figures regarding land use.
Superficie agricola persa ogni anno negli ultimi 25.000 anni, vedete che sono oltre 10.000 ettari l'anno.
More than 10,000 hectares a year are lost. So if we thought about the unrealistic scenario of having only ground installations, this is what we will get. 0.6% of total agricultural area that will be necessary and 0.8% of utilized agricultural area. 50% PV ground targets. PNIEC, and this is Italia Solare estimate, this is the abandoned agricultural area since 1990. This is to understand that quite often this is just prejudice because this area is needed for the achievement of our targets, and it's not that much. Then employment, which is also important. We don't hear much about photovoltaics, but it's a labor-intensive sector. For example, here we used an employment index 0.7%. So once these 73,000 megawatts are installed, according to indications of Italia Solare, we would have 51,000 permanent employees, and for O&M activities, 26,500 indirect jobs. So a total number of 77,500 annual work units. And this is interesting data that is comparable to farming. Photovoltaics has a number of employed people that is definitely higher than farming. But I have to explain the slide. I'm not saying that you have to stop being farmers and focus on photovoltaics, otherwise the problems of Italy won't be solved. The idea is to create a synergy between farming and photovoltaics, so differentiate the business and to improve the cash flows of farms to invest on mechanization, on agricultural production, according to new parameters, according to new technology, according to a new system using blockchain. A 4.0 agriculture. This is the challenge of photovoltaics. So trying to develop new models together. What's Italia Solare's proposal? Maybe it's a different one, different than usual. It's something that might seem innovative to some, and it might be revolutionary to others. I think these are very simple proposals and easy to share. First of all, plans on agricultural land. This is my focus, near to areas of demand. What's necessary? We need energy planning that takes into consideration their proximity with areas of power demand. And this is something that will be very useful for the future energy communities. So what should we do in these cases? We should build plants with procedures that can be streamlined. So our proposal is that for medium voltage plants that are not in restricted areas that should be exempted from environmental impact procedures. but just have simple screening procedure, given certainty of timescale with maximum 60 days to obtain the VIA exemption, whereas AT plants would follow the existing procedure according to PAUR. So for MT plants, we would have a streamlined procedure, and this is something that would give a strong sign for these plants. So plants built by agro-energy businesses. So photovoltaic plants made by agricultural companies that make an investment for their own energy needs. This would lead to new opportunities for growing crops, for livestock farming, integrated with PV plants. These are some case studies in Italy. For example, eggplant, cauliflower, fennel, grapevines. These are all greenhouses, and you can use mono-axial chasers for some type of cultivation. So, same simplification we've seen for other plants, a procedure that is simplified. And a price stability mechanism with a 10-year guarantee of PPAs. So this would lead to stable cash flows over time. Let's move on. If there's an investor that wants to build plants on agricultural land, they could choose from one or more of the following options, depending on the regional government, because at a regional government, we have a different characterization of the local areas. Vertical farming, hydroponics, aquaponics, to promote agricultural livestock farming by participating in the activities of agricultural businesses on the land, used to site PV plants or in other parts of the same region. Other choices for large-sized plants on agricultural land, taking part in construction works for irrigation reservoirs, or taking part in reforestation activities, cultivation of leguminous plants, recovery of rainwater, carbon farming techniques for CO2 capture and sequestration, and this is another important element to stress. Then we've got a few recommendations regarding plants on agricultural land. For example, planning for storage capacity. I'm thinking of electrochemical storage in particular. So during planning, we might think of an energy capacity that is correctly planned in relation to the size of the plant. This should set the stage for future upgrades without asking for further authorizations. Or another interesting thing regards electric mobility, installation of ultra-fast recharging points with info points to raise awareness about environmental issues and promotion, for example, of local products or services. These are some examples that you can find. This is a case study on boosting lettuce production with mono-axial chasers and trackers. I will be fast because my time is up. Another study regarding high harvesting yield, an increase in the total productivity of a land area. By combining mobile photovoltaic panels and food crops, optimizing the energy side and agricultural side. And this is everything. Thank you for your attention. So let's wait for new ideas. We are ready to exchange our views, and let's move on at full throttle. Thank you.
Eccoci. Secondo intervento.
Thank you. And now I give the floor to the second speaker, Mauro Moroni. I want to make a statement on my own responsibility. Going back to our event to 2 years ago, what I found very interesting was to move some of the controls from the regional level to a central level. There are some sectors where energy, where streamlining all the existing mechanisms and existing rules, I think, would have been a wise choice.
Salve a tutti, io sono Mauro Moroni, sono nel settore di
Good morning. Moroni and Path is the largest Italian technical advisor. We are part of the Kiwa Group since last August. Kiwa is one of the largest global certification companies with almost 50 people working, over 4,000 employees in over 100 companies. I'm going to focus on our core business, and I want to be rather quick. I think at this time of the afternoon, it may be difficult to swallow further facts and figures, so I'm not going to show you all the slides because some of them concern issues that have already been discussed by other speakers. So, in Europe, investments on renewables is growing everywhere, and Italy is no exception. New capacity that we want to achieve in 2023 is around 10 gigawatt, but the market is stable. But it's not really stable. We are working on some pipelines for a couple of gigawatts, and other technical advisors are developing similar infrastructures. So I think the market is actually starting to develop more. Developers are starting to work very hard on this. I'm not going to talk about this thing, but basically in Italy, for utility scale, we produce plants on roofs and on land. The ESR decree concerns industrial applications. The first auction has come out. Almost all the projects are going to have a price of around 65 cents. That's quite a good price, but how long is it going to last? Well, it's hard to say. When large solar plants will be available, are available, prices will start to drop. For plants on agricultural lands, most of those we are following are actually, as I said, on agricultural lands. I'm not going to talk about the decree again on ESR, on RES, or on prices that have already mentioned by other speakers. So I'll focus on technological drivers. Following the market very carefully and providing advice to our clients, large investment funds, large operators, we're always trying to provide information so that they may minimize their LSOI. Developers normally want to increase production capacity in any hectare of land. Conversely, our idea is different. We say, okay, let's start this plant and try to make it as effective and efficient as possible. The technology is monocrystalline modules, but there are also other things, PERC and other kind of modules that are gaining ground. The main difference between 2008 and 2020 concerns the installed power. In the past, there was 1 megawatt on 2 hectares. Now it's 1.5 megawatts, and that's, of course, good for soil to reduce soil coverage. String inverters require optimization of civil works, plant availability, maintenance cost, spare parts availability, and plant monitoring. I think that at the moment there are 5, 6, or 7 gigawatt of production that is actually at risk in Italy. Most of our investors use monoaxial trackers that provide a good performance, good reliability, reasonably low price, and are easy to install. Bifacial modules are also gaining ground with a slight price increase. You can improve production capacity. So bifacial plants are worth more than monofacial plants because they produce more. Depending on power, you can have, as I said, string or centralized inverters. The market is more interested in string inverters in very large plants. Perhaps this is not the case. The advantages of string inverters, as I said, is that once you have it, it remains productive for a long time, much more than in centralized plants, even though those that are available now are smaller than they were, are larger than they were 5 years ago, 6 years ago. But if you have a small centralized system, when you stop a machine, you stop the production of one tenth of a megawatt. Now, this module price trends is following the drop in cost and help us to make these plants profitably. These are data taken last year. You see that the value of 2019 was completely different from expectations. I think it was 82. Yeah, 820,000 euro per megawatt for a utility scale plant. That doesn't make sense. For 20 megawatt, the price would be 550 euro per megawatt. So they completely missed the real price of capex. Let's say that normally this is the threshold you can expect for high tension plants. In terms of authorization, depending on where you want to place the plant, you require different authorizations. It can be a simple communication to the municipality for building integrated plants. For industrial plants, and I wrote an article, and I read another article recently on this, shows that industrial market has slowed down, not because companies are not interested, but because often they don't know how to make a plant, and they know much about its cost effectiveness. PAS is interesting. This can be done on flat rooftops with any power, and then there's the single authorization, as we call it, issued by the regional and provincial government. I think that we can't certainly say that there's been a streamlining in authorization in Italy. Within PAS, there are many subdivisions depending on a number of factors. So it's extremely complex. So it seems that politics really has no clue of what they should do to streamline procedures in this sense. With regard to the environmental side, well, that's an important part of authorization. Above at 1 megawatt of power, there's less attention. If you fail the screening, it's a loss. So since the procedure is quite long, other options are more interesting. Trento, with 200 kilowatt, have chosen the EIA, for example, and then there's the new procedure putting together single authorization and EIA that should drive the new development in Italy to establish a clearer set of rules.
Le competenze autorizzative. La
Again,
sinistra l'autorizzazione unica
on the left you
considerano
can
hai ragione
see
come
the
diceva
single
prima, sono regionali,
authorizations,
sono
where you can
regionali
see that this
e
can be
provinciali o
issued
solo provinciali.
by the
E
regional
dall'altra parte invece
government,
abbiamo
by
l'autorità
both the
ambientale.
regional
Cosa
and the
abbiamo
provincial
oltre a questo?
government,
Che
only by the latter.
perché noi
Then
vogliamo
the
fare un regola
environmental
ovviamente farà moltissimi parchi solari,
impact
a idonei e non
assessment,
idonei.
you
Quindi
can
a
see
sommare
again
diciamo, questa
uh,
facilità
who's responsible for
organizzativa
what.
tra
And then there are
province e
regions
regioni che si
with
rimpalano anche perché è facile
official
mettere il trasporto,
detection
c'è anche
of
il contesto
unsuitable sites
dell'autorizzazione che
for
però in un certo senso
PV
dovrebbe
installation.
semplificare perché se la è idonea l'impianto dovrebbe essere
If
autorizzato
one
dalla
area
semplicità.
is
Purtroppo
suitable,
infatti queste cose qui ancora non avvengono.
authorization should be issued
Per fare un esempio,
more
alcune regioni
simply,
d'Italia,
but in fact
la
this is
Sardegna
not
per esempio
the case.
l'autorizzazione
In
unica necessaria
Sardinia,
per impianti sottomarini è
they have
l'autorizzazione
the
fluviale.
single authorization for
Per il
plants over
Lazio e
1
per le
megawatt.
province sono
For
referenti all'autorizzazione
Lazio,
unica. La
the
regione
province
invece
gives the
per
single
la cosa dell'impatto
authorization and the
ambientale.
regional
Cioè la
government
regione
is
unica fa 5
responsible
megawatt,
for
la cosa dell'impatto ambientale
EIA.
per 1,3
When they're
megawatt.
over
Questo 1,3 megawatt è
3
già noioso.
megawatt, they need to have environmental impact assessment and not a single authorization. Strange as it may appear, I mean, it doesn't make any sense, does it?
Puglia e la Sicilia
Then
hanno questi
Puglia,
poteri e
Sicilia have
quindi
further
diciamo poteri
differences,
che sono a
and
volte
this
anche diversi.
responsibility is in the
Da una
hands of
parte
other
ragiona per
bodies.
un'autorizzazione
But how long
differente,
does
ci
it
sono
take in
anche altri
Italy to get an
sviluppatori e
authorization?
il tempo mediamente in
On
Italia
average,
potrebbe essere
we can say that
diciamo 1 o 3 anni.
the time you need
Questo
is
diciamo
from
per fare
1 to 3
un'autorizzazione, quindi
years.
non è che ce la inventiamo. E abbiamo una Sicilia che, anzi questo qui, pre il carico che c'è adesso si metteva circa 3 anni, adesso
In
speriamo che
Sicily, in
no,
the
che
past, it
avvenga
took
una sorta di velocizzata
3
questa cosa,
years. We hope that this has been
perché
stepped
sennò
up now.
i ritardi dei tempi del 2030
Otherwise, we won't
ancora
be able
imbarazzanti,
to
però speriamo
do
che per
all
esempio
we have to do by 2030.
il Piemonte ci mette invece mediamente un anno.
Conversely, in
Lo sviluppo che
Piedmont, it
vediamo
takes
noi per
about
esempio
1
in
year.
Italia, che salendo direttamente
The
dalla
development
Sicilia,
of
la Puglia, la
the
Basilicata,
improvement
stanno
in
diventando sempre più
authorization
verso nord, perché sono aree
is
industrializzate, quindi c'è più
gradually
lavorazione,
expanding
c'è più
northwards,
terreno industriale,
uh,
c'è più assetto industriale, è
where
possibile
there
avere
are
anche
more
più stabilità
industries,
della
there may
rete
be
e
a more
quant'altro.
stable grid, and
Per
so
parlare un
on.
attimo di connessioni, come sapete
In
per fare
terms
un
of
impianto che si
connections,
collettano alla rete insomma
of
ci
course,
fate
you need to
molto
have proper
e normalmente poi
connections for a
media
plant.
tensione sotto i 10 megawatt o maggiore di
You
10
can have it
megawatt.
basically below or above 10 megawatts. The time to provide authorization is 18 to 25 months, depending on its complexity. So the market is moving ahead, but this process is quite time-consuming. In spite of all improvement in efficiency, the real market will be in the second half of 2020, where there will be an intensification of the first implants, and then in 2021 there will be an important peak in terms of gigawatt, 1 or 1.5. I think that in 2 years there will be at least 1 or 1.5 gigawatt more of solar energy. The cost of a connection for 25 megawatt can be about 1.5 million euro. These are the critical areas that you all know, where there's more density or where there are critical lines. But yet, most of this development is now occurring in the south. We already talked about modernization. What's going to be critical is in the next years to address the problem of electricity line saturation. That's the real obstacle, because in 3 or 4 or 5 years it will be congested, and modernization has to come in advance. Otherwise, that can really be a problem. So to get a permit, you have to have, of course, an area for the installation. You have to have final design and commissioning and decommissioning plan, a positive opinion for EIA screening or full EIA if necessary, and then communication of works commencement, completion according to requirements, compliance of the work with authorized project, implementation of mitigation works, and the procedure to guarantee decommissioning and restoration. What are the critical issues here? Well, development has to be performed correctly from the very beginning, and not as was the case in the past, where often what was done was not in line with the project that had received authorization. Sometimes it was the opposite. The project that had received the authorization was not good, and it was implemented as such. I think we have to do the opposite thing. We have to make sure from the beginning the cost of energy production must be as low as possible. We have to produce energy as businessmen in the real sense. So we have to start in the right direction and focus on quality, on temperature of solar panels, the software, the maintenance costs, all sorts of details that are part of the project.
Cosa succede? La cosa importante è quando questi sviluppi arriveranno a termine, bisogna che questi sviluppi siano veramente ready to build e non progetti in cui devo
All
fare
these
vari
things
per realizzarli.
must be
Correggere bene il progetto
done perfectly without the need for further variations. Otherwise, that will be another waste of time after you normally have a project that is theoretically ready to build. You can and find out that there are a number of problems in terms of layout, in terms of megawatt, and so the project has a lower production capability. Okay, thank you very much for your attention.
Non era vero, ma apprezziamo la chiusa. Ok, sull'ultimo intervento, dove torniamo a parlare di accumuli, anche se dal punto di vista di un...
For all the last presentation, we keep talking about storage.
Oltre ovviamente ad introdurre l'ultimo intervento.
Well, I would like to introduce the last speaker, but I also would like to ask. There are two very important elements. that are very much linked to storage, so grid saturation and large-sized plants of gigawatts, or 1 gigawatt. It's just a suggestion I'm coming up with. Thank you for the kind invitation, and congratulations on your working day.
Qualche considerazione generale prima di entrare.
Okay, I'm going to make a few general considerations before I talk about storage. Also, in the light of what other speakers have said today, the prospects for solar energy in the future need two key things: a solid, stable technology, reliable technology, and there has to be, and there is indeed, a lot of interest in this area by investors, much more than probably is the case in any other sector. However, there are also some important obstacles to Italian development in this area. Some have been mentioned already, but I want to go back to them. These are the areas in which we really have to fight the battle. Mauro was mentioning average size plants that don't have sufficient maintenance. Apart from the size, I think that the problem is that there are many plants that are mismanaged, those that are not managed by professionals, and they are, alas, the majority. The 20 gigawatt we have now, in 10 years' time, will be able to produce very little energy. The problem is not easy to solve, but if you think how complex a maintenance work has become now, following all the necessary procedures, I understand quite obviously that if these plants are not managed by professionals, they're going to degrade very quickly. Now, we want to work in terms of asset management when it comes to dealing with one panel, but then there's also all the problems that we do have in accordance with the existing regulation. The second battle is repowering. We need to use that for renewable energies and for solar energy. If I remove an old panel and replace it with a newer panel that is more powerful, that should be sufficient. And I hope that politicians are taking heed of that, even though in practice I can't see the results of that as yet. You mentioned the referendum. Well, I think that that was really a defeat. I mean, having to discuss with regional governments, with all the differences in the attitude that they have, is extremely complex. In addition, there's no clear connection between the objectives at international and national level and the management of the instruments needed to achieve those objectives that are actually run and entirely governed on a regional basis. Another important point concerns plants on agricultural land. I appreciated what was said right now. We've been managing this kind of plants for a long time with very good outcomes in terms of energy production and farming. Some farms have been able to improve thanks to what we have done there. So we feel that this is one important part of the future of photovoltaic energy. For some time, people have been saying that solar panels steal land to agriculture, but that's absolutely false. Well, it's true only to a very minor extent. We need to do that and make sure that the necessary authorization is given. The plants on industrial land are few and far apart. If we can manage or create these plants, I'll be happy, but we have to clarify this thing in the eyes of the people. Although it doesn't make any sense, people keep repeating that, have kept repeating that for 10 years. It's really a piece of fake news.
Arrivo all'ultimo elemento, quindi parliamo poi del mio intervento, che è lo storage.
Now, having said that, I want to talk about storage today. We feel that storage is very important for two reasons, technically. First of all, because it solves a problem and opens an opportunity. Since there's the hours of production tend to be stable, it will cannibalize itself and reduce prices in the period in which it's working. So that is one thing that should be addressed. Otherwise, no further investment is coming along. The opportunity is that renewable sources of energy production can be planned, and so you can open up the market of dispatching services. That's another key battle we have to wage. Some attempts are being made, some tests are being run, but we're still far from doing what we should do in this sense. So we are aware of the importance of storage. For this reason, we commissioned a survey to Elements, a company, to highlight the prerequisites to stimulate investments on storage devices. I'm going to skip many of these slides. This is a picture of ourselves, if you like. We've been on the market for 10 years. We got over 850 megawatts of installed power in Italy. The number of plants is 311 now. We are controlled by F2I, Italian Fund for Infrastructure, that is active only in Italy now. As you see, we are active throughout Italy, with the exception of Trentino and Liguria. So practically, we are present everywhere, especially in the blue regions, dark blue. In the first years, we've been building our plants, and in the following years, we've acquired new plants. Since the market, the construction had slowed down very much. But I want to go directly to the question of storage. Here you can see the present number of storage projects in Europe above 1 megawatt. I'm talking about hydroelectric, not hydroelectric power, okay? 3 gigawatts of storage projects in Europe without pumping systems. 81% of them are electrochemical batteries, and 90% of them are lithium-ion batteries. So that's the winning technology. The average size of new projects is growing. They're now 25. It's now 25 megawatts. So for Italy, that would be a high utility scale plant. Most of these projects are located in the UK and in Germany. The reason why they're investing more there is that in these two countries, regulations enable investors to plan their activities, their cash flows on the basis of technical projects that provide a stable income thanks to the existing legislation. There are different rules and regulations in other countries, but the key markets in Europe now, as I said, are UK and Germany. So what have we done? We took the data from PNC, whereby storage size should be about 7 gigawatt, including large and small scale and pumping plants. We tried to develop some business cases based on the construction of a photovoltaic plant in addition to an existing electrochemical storage system, with the idea of producing power-intensive and energy-intensive services and to improve development costs by putting together the PV plant and the storage.
The slide is full of words. You can see the services that a battery can potentially offer to the market. There are 3 energy-intensive services and 2 power services. The energy-intensive services range from time shifting, balancing, so the possibility of managing imbalances of power in the electric system, the power system. Tertiary reserve, which has been mentioned, but from a technical standpoint, we have realized that the electrochemical storage is not the best instrument. And then 2 power-intensive services, primary reserve and secondary reserve. So the battery gives to the power system, to the power grid, the energy necessary for the grid. So we have tried to build some business cases, focusing on some battery projects. So we have assumed an energy-intensive storage system to provide time shifting and balancing services with a battery with a ratio power to energy 1:4, and 2 more battery systems aimed to power markets, primary and secondary, of a smaller size, with an energy to power ratio that was different, 1:5 and 1 and 2 megawatt hours. Then simulation was made on a specific case in the south of Italy. What numbers have we used? So there are several numbers here in terms of storage.
Qui c'è sono stati, si è utilizzato un po' di analisi reperite da studi di mercato, da analisti, ma è stato fatto anche un lavoro, diciamo, bottom up. Quindi
A bottom-up work was done with several meetings with technology providers. 350 kilowatt hours was the maximum limit, with a pretty aggressive scenario, we must say that. So cost reduction, which I would not exclude, by 45% over the next 6 to 7 years. So the scenario shows a cost reduction over the next few years. Then how much? Well, we will have to see, because every estimate risks being wrong today. So based on this data, we have simulated what the profits might be of the different services in line with the current regulations in force. I don't want to bore you at death with numbers, but there are time shifting and balancing services reaching certain levels. Of course, the combination of the two services does not generate an addition of the two profits, because the overlapping of the services cannot be done, the same power being equal, but this is a technical detail linked to the storage capacity of the battery that is inevitably limited. We've also simulated power-intensive services. So what would happen if we sold power services? In this case, on primary regulation, there are not numbers, there aren't any numbers that make sense. We have assumed an ultra-fast regulation service in line with the English market, where the service is regulated, and this was confirmed in the Fast Reserve pilot project that was published by Turner. And we are more or less in line to confirm that we are there with the numbers. This is just to say that when it comes to numbers, we might obtain something. The actual problem we have when it comes to storage is the risks that are incompatible with a meaningful investment decision. We've got problems regarding regulation, so the regulatory framework, which is not defined. We have problem of useful life of the plant, which is, of course, poorly foreseeable. And we also have not so feasible estimates with respect to the life cycle of the plants. In theory, we might have important profitability in storage, 10%. These numbers are just by way indication. The problem is that profitability is going to be zeroed if we consider also the technological and regulatory market risks. So the conclusion is that if we have to do storage, and we have to do it, we have to face these four problems. Two are pretty technical, so we need regulation instruments, management systems for the state of charge of the battery. This is very technical, I won't go into the details. But above all, we have to find some signs for price or remuneration of availability on energy for both services. Without these rules, a technically feasible investment won't be possible. Thank you very much. So a slight change. Marco Martorana is taking the floor because then he has to leave. He was one of the panelists. For logistic reasons, he has to leave, so we're going to hear from him now. So the theme of this panel discussion is the type of investments you see on the market in addition to traditional investments, even the most innovative ones of self-consumption in part. Hopefully the promise made by Senator Girotto of the energy communities is kept, and also electric mobility for the next few years. Thank you. Thank you for the kind invitation. And congratulations for your resistance. This is another confirmation of how solid this sector is, and I would like to thank the organizers. I'm sorry, but I have to catch a train, which is almost leaving now. So let's focus on the positive news. The positive news is that investments in renewables and investments in photovoltaics in particular have proven to be extremely safe in terms of financing. So the asset class of photovoltaic compared with other asset classes we are financing, more specifically I deal with leasing, so there's a whole world to consider here. Real estate equipment is the safest, so it's the most performing portfolio. Then we have made, of course, important investments in terms of asset control. So from finances, and we have turned into actual partners of our clients. And our relationship lasts way longer than the average marriage in Italy. Anyway, it's a long-term relationship. So I've learned, along with our clients, what are the opportunities in addition to the risks of these assets. And we had something very interesting confirmed today, that these objects, which we all have interpreted as an opportunity, a financial opportunity, is now becoming an industrial opportunity. And in a future scenario, this will have many hidden opportunities we can't see or we can't place more value on. And this is a very good premise, because we can finance projects based on a business plan that probably is very cautionary with respect to the potentiality of that object, so that asset class is an important compartment to finance, and we as UniCredit, as I have announced it in our sustainability plan, we will do our share. Let's go back to the question. The market we see is a market characterized by many questions regarding rooftop plants for self-consumption need. And I must say that entrepreneurs do not consider incentives at all. So it's an investment. It's an investment that has a 6 to 7 year payback. So it's an eligible investment for an entrepreneur that, of course, has to make some choices and has some priorities to stick to. Of course, the question of green tech and this great movement that is accelerating is helping investors to focus on these investments, because there's definitely a marketing component that must not be neglected. It's a positive trend that is helping entrepreneurs to choose to invest in a photovoltaic rather than in something else. Becoming aware of the energy variability that was maybe hidden in the unit cost of the product, so helping recover some productivity where they weren't aware of the fact that there could be some room for improvement. So the self-consumption market is a market that, in our view, will have the solidity to grow over the next few months. There are already some important signs. Whereas the market of large-sized plants for market parity users is a market that must engage the end consumer, which is not happening right now. As operators, we think of the traders, of the corporate realities we can sign a long-term PPA with. And this is the scenario we are approaching every day. So we carry out risk analyses. So the ultimate question, though, is going to buy all this green energy, because entrepreneurs have two options: either investing in a plant or buying green energy. So we have to see where's the supply of green energy, but that's not only the industry market, it's also the retail market that in Italy accounts for 40% of electric consumption, so power consumption. So it's pretty important, and it's the market to which traders are selling. So the actual question is, are consumers mature and are on board all the reasoning we are making? Because if consumers don't have this sensitivity or don't find the instruments, and I will briefly tell you an anecdote. My 10-year-old girl came home a few weeks ago and asked, "Well, Dad, do we buy green energy?" Well, it's a strange question, because you check on the bill, and in the best case scenario, your green energy share is 30% or 40% tops. Secondly, if we want to look for an alternative, because, of course, what your children ask you is a priority, we would have trouble finding supply on the market. So When we think of large-sized plants, market parity, utility scale, and we look at the outlet markets, we must also think that something should click in the consumers, and not only industrial consumers, to help the whole process, because when we feel this push, we see what happens. When the sensitivity of the new generation is translated into something that makes us act, I'm sure that most of the obstacles we have identified today will be solved, because in that case they will become an absolute priority of us all as consumers, our families, our operators of the sector. Thank you very much. Thank you. We can now move on to the panel discussion to conclude the day. I will give the floor to Donato Rotundo last for a very simple reason. Since he should give a few answers also to the proposal made by Italia Solare, at least we try to keep everyone in the room. Sorry, we can't translate comments made off mic because we can't hear them. So, Cristina Torres Quevedo. She's part of the Association of Spanish Operators.
I mean, what can you suggest to Italian operators to solve issues, bureaucratic hurdles, or the next growing period for photovoltaic?
From our experience in Spanish, I will say one of the things to avoid in our personal, Spanish experience, is regulatory risk. In Spain, we have been suffering regulatory risk for lots of years, so this has damaged the development of the industry. We have had peaks and valleys, and we haven't had stability, which I will say it's a key factor for money investment. To develop the industry, you need stability. So that's the first things, if possible, that we all should avoid. Second thing that has happened in Spain with the publication of the PNIEC is a huge amount or increase in permit connecting rights or permit. We have high speculation on connecting permits. Our PNIEC settles an increase from our 5 gigawatt today to 35 gigawatt in 2030. Right now, our system operator has registered more than 100 gigabyte permit requests. And our main problem right now is that not all of those projects or those requests are backed by a strong financial project. So that's a main issue right now in Spain, the speculation around the connection permits. Another thing that we have been considering, which may be good or not, projects are developing under PPAs and merchant, but still we believe or not believe, related to the tender, is tender or auctions necessary for the development of the market? As far as we are concerned, we believe that auctions could provide a steady gigawatt installation per year, but have a great risk right now in terms of price signals. We want to avoid reckless discounts in prices, because if not, tender will be useless, and all projects will be based on PPAs or merchant agreements. And that's a very important scenario if we want to have a steady gigawatt increase, instead of having kind of a ladder profile in the development, kind of lots of flat years with peak investment afterwards. So that's one thing to consider. And there's something also that's been spoken today. It's about environmental impact. We think environmental impact is a key driver of success in the future, because if we are not able to cope environmental impact with the development of the industry, we will not be able to have a strong development at the end, because it's very important to preserve biodiversity and land enhancement. That's also a key issue in Spain, and from UNEF we are working with government in settle kind of a good practices framework to preserve land and biodiversity and within the development of the industry. And finally, I will say that we have a huge challenge right now. I mean, at least in Spain, PV industry will become a key driver for employment and growth, while in other energies there's going to be lots of losses of employment. So we have a huge responsibility to provide an industrialization path to settle a stable framework for this growth and employment to happen. And that's more.
Thank you very much, Cristina. Giuseppe Mastropieri.
Giuseppe Mastropieri. What should the operators do in this transition phase and in this development phase? What about consumers? How can they be involved? As Marco Martorana said, well, the life of corporate PPAs is very hard in Italy. We've got a power market that is still resisting. So the merchant way is the Italian way. There's a strong interest on the part of energy communities. We are testing forms of involvements that are very interesting, also through the contributions of local communities. And today we've got platforms allowing us to have environmental compensation, but also more active forms of engagement of the population to guarantee the benefits, necessary benefits for PV plants. But in small and medium-sized plants, not only in the field of energy cooperatives in Italy, many interesting initiatives are being taken. With respect to large-sized plants, just a couple of words regarding the agrovoltaic sector. We are trying to avoid a crisis of institutional balance at a local level, because many regional governments are getting scared about the tremendous amount of projects that are being submitted to them. It is also true that developing agrovoltaic activities is not that easy or straightforward. For example, we are focusing on olive trees or vines that are typical of the Salento region in Apulia. But when we talk about agricultural shares to stick to install PV plants, well, you end up in a movie that is endless, because you need lots of authorizations, and if this is the agrophotovoltaic sector, that will be hard for them. Then there are Highlanders here that still resisting. I'm sure they all have lithium batteries on. Anyway, joking aside, I won't talk at length, but we have done a winter package, clean energy package for Europeans, etc. And as burden sharing. Burden sharing is something we have approved in Italy in 2012. There's a law saying that every region must contribute to the balance, etc. And I see that you're all bored. But what I mean is that today we have a concentration of plans, concentration of proposals for new plans in very few regions. So Sicily, Apulia, Lazio. When we've got 3 gigas in Brindisi, or 3 gigas in Lazio, or 3 gigas near Ragusa in Sicily. Well, Italy is not 4 provinces only, but many more. And if we look at the regulations, in Tuscany, apparently 99% of the land is not eligible. In Basilicata, 97.8% of the land is not eligible. So there's a question of engagement here. So it wouldn't be bad for some other regions to be involved, because Emilia-Romagna and Calabria, of course, have certain rules to abide by. For example, out of 100 hectares, they can occupy only 10. What I mean is that we would end up focusing all our interest in some regions, with the obvious consequences. 3 to 5 years to get some bogus authorizations. To conclude, market parity is arriving in Germany. It is already there in southern France. We had a couple of years where we were the focus of Europe because the Spanish market is undergoing difficulties in keeping the PUN, and I don't want us to miss this opportunity. Because people might realize that getting authorization in Italy is science fiction, they would prefer Bavaria or Germany in general. That would be a shame, because our market might end up being just a market of authorizations rather than a market of plans. And I will stop here, but the feeling is that there's lots of noise, but very limited will to make things concrete, especially on the part of regional governments. Maybe only in Lazio there are provincial authorizations there, and it's not by accident. So this energy transition maybe could take shape at an infrastructural level. And that's it. Thank you. To conclude, I will hand the floor to Donato Rotundo to make his final remarks on the proposal made by Italia Solare, and then Italia Solare will draw the final conclusions. Thank you. Thank you for the kind invitation. As far as we are concerned, it is the first time we concretely talk about a proposal and guidelines. And I think they are incredibly important for the future, because several important comments were made here. On the one hand, we've got PNIEC that gives this great opportunity of development to photovoltaic. Then we will soon start talking about law, about a law regarding land consumption. So it is important to understand what are the objectives we are setting, and so that these objectives are common and thereby guiding development somehow. With respect to PNIEC, just one word. PNIEC needs being implemented at 360 degrees, because agriculture is based on photovoltaic and on bioenergy. And we need to relaunch this process altogether. Otherwise, we would run the risk, as others have mentioned, to have biogas, Cremona, Brescia, Mantova, wind and in Apulia, and photovoltaic in Campania. So we would have cumulative damage here. Just a couple of words about agriculture. I think we are facing an important challenge. More efficiency in production processes, and this includes energy, digitization, circular bioeconomy, and maybe things you don't like that much, genetic improvement. These are 4 challenges that regard the future of agriculture. The future of agriculture that is based on cost reduction, increase in profitability, quality of products, and energy efficiency plays a role here. The latest data by GSE tell us that 13% of power is used for farming. Probably there was a slowdown. And we have to have a relaunch here, and there's something in the guidelines. Istat data from last year provide us very interesting information. 8% of agricultural companies, we're talking about 1.2 million farms, have diversified. And they are diversifying with holiday farming, energy efficiency. So there's a common heritage that can be implemented. And in the guidelines, this section devoted to farming is very important. So energy communities is maybe the next challenge that will help us overcome these constraints on agricultural land and on incentives, because talking about energy communities will probably be helpful. The development of farms, etc., can depend very much on this, or asbestos disposal. There are lots of problems to address in the future. For example, fossil fuels should be replaced in agricultural tractors, or biomethane. It is very important to work on these issues. So we have to join forces when it comes to farming. I won't go into the details of urban areas. There's a lot to do in peri-urban areas. In my view, it is important to build by filling the spaces that are staying empty. Then the forestry side. So give new momentum to all urban green areas. And then PV plants. We have to work on these 3 questions, on these 3 themes. And then the trickiest part, which is plants that are not owned by farms, but that are placed on agricultural land. We have to think about it. I've read the data very carefully, and I remember that 6 years ago, the Ministry of Agriculture, in its strategic plan on bioenergy, talked about a definition of marginal areas. This is a process that has come to an end now. If we look at total agricultural surface and the 5 million hectares that are the ones on which we should work, there's little there of what is not used, because everything is abandoned, has ended up in urbanization, or in the naturalization, or in the forest side, that are not maintained properly. So the challenge starts here with the environmental part. How can we recover? In my view, we have to work on plants of limited size. There's a lot to do. There's a lot to work on. The installation of new plants should bring something to the territory. We have to avoid investing public money for irrigation. It's important to participate in working groups and to find a common solution. Well, I think you're happy with this answer. Yes, we've got lots of things to do. We have been so much entangled in things to say that we have ended up so late. So as an association, we have the obligation and the duty to protect all the activities in this sector, because they should all help us reach the results that are very challenging, so small, medium, and large-sized. We have to find situations and solutions that are synergic with the territory. The energy communities is something we have been advocating for a long time, because they lead to integration with the territory, and also local economies are encouraged. And we have to think about how to integrate large-sized plants. We can't pretend they don't exist. We have to think that these plants will be built in a way that is as compatible as possible with the land. And that's the actual challenge. So on the one hand, I would suggest that all the operators of the sector that are members of the association talk about what they are doing, so that we can acquire good practices that are brought forward, because we know many, but we haven't well organized them, and this is a request. A second thing is to start working groups, and one thing I would like to do as Italia Solare is, since I have seen the pictures presented by Mauro Moroni about how plans are authorized in Italy, I would like to take those two slides and show them to the Ministry for Economic Development, to show that it's impossible that such a process has to be followed to get authorizations in Italy. This is what lies ahead of us, which is huge. And please support us all. Thank you. I will conclude the panel, handed the floor over to President Viscontini. I feel like the mayors before the dialogue began on same-sex couples. So I will hand the floor over to the President. No worries, I won't deliver any speech. Just conclusions and acknowledgements. I would like to thank UNEF. I would like to thank Jose. Please send hello to Jose when you go back to Spain. And also Confagricoltura. We talked about a very important topic last, and I'm very confident that this is just a first step in the right direction. And we are ready to organize other meetings to work together with common sense and with competence, with expertise. We will do our share, but we need experts in other fields to find the best solutions. So I would like to thank everyone, all the attendants, and all those who have followed us from home in this very long day. I would like to thank the speakers, the moderators, the sponsors who have made all this possible. All the presentations have been recorded, so for those who are willing to see again the slides or also hear some important explanations, this will be possible, because we really had an overdose of important content. So thank you all. I would like to thank the staff that has made this possible. They've been organizing this day for weeks. Thank you very much, and see you next time.